Welcome to the Monday, March 17th Board of Selectmen's meeting. Tonight, we have the first item on the agenda is the signing of the warrant.
Motion, Mr. Chairman.
Seconded.
Also approved, that's unanimous. Next, we have approval of the March 10th, 2014 minutes as amended with the sheet that's been provided to the board members since we received our packet.
Motion, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
I'll also vote in favor, that's unanimous. Next item we have on the agenda is citizen participation. Not seeing a lot of people here. I'll ask that if anybody has anything they'd like to address to the board they don't have a line item on the agenda for, let me know. All right, not hearing anyone, we'll jump right to public hearings and scheduled appointments. Before we get into that, just as a matter of process for the candidates that are here for the town treasurer's position, what I'd like to do for that is when we get to that, and that should be probably about 15 minutes or so, we'll go over resumes provided, and then we'll each of the members of the board will then have an opportunity to ask a question, and we'll just rotate. So people want an understanding of process. That's the process we're going to use. We're estimating about 45 minutes per interview. So. Again, so going back to the public hearing scheduled appointments, we have a 6 p.m. Insurance Advisory Committee recommendation for FY15. Welcome. I'll let everybody introduce themselves.
I'm Kelly Capisi, I'm the temporary treasurer. With me today is Peter Filosa from, he's the chairman of the Insurance Advisory Committee.
Welcome again, Peter.
And
Yes.
Barbara Spragna, she's our healthcare consultant.
Welcome, Barbara.
She,
Didn't recognize you at first.
I know.
and we have
Cold out there.
a couple of
It
members
is.
from the Insurance Advisory Committee, Tommy Parenti and Mary Frances Best. And we also have Adam Thornton from Blue Cross Blue Shield
Welcome.
behind me,
And Brian from Harvard.
and Brian from Harvard Pilgrim.
Okay.
That's
Well,
all right.
we'll let you get into what you've provided us a primer for what you'd like to discuss.
Yes.
So we'll let you explain it.
The letter that I submitted to the board last week basically explains the process that the Insurance Advisory Committee went through this year for renewal. We got a high increase rate presented to us from Harvard Pilgrim, mostly based on our utilization this past year. So it goes on to explain that we went out to bid. A couple of companies refused to submit quotes. We did entertain Blue Cross Blue Shield to come in and make a presentation to the Insurance Advisory Committee, and the members were allowed to ask questions about the plans. And they took some time, went back to their respective unions to discuss, see how the membership felt about it, because there's an increase from today's rates. And they came back and, that seems to be the consensus of the committee, that they want to move forward and switch over to Blue Cross Blue Shield.
Okay, from the Harvard Pilgrim to the Blue Cross Blue
Correct.
Shield, okay?
GIC was considered.
Okay. Can you tell me what else was considered in the process? that
Yes,
you
we
evaluated
also,
this?
early on, we discussed the possibility going to the GIC, and the members also did some homework in regards to that, and the consent, at this time, we don't feel that it's in our best interest. It takes away a lot of our negotiating power. You have to sign up for at least a minimum of a 3-year contract. And based on the GIC's policies and procedures, the very earliest we would be able to get in would be January 1st, 15, possibly July, depending, when we got notification into them. There are some more choices in that plan, and everybody did look into it. However, and the rates.
Is there any analysis of the various plans, tables, data, anything that the Insurance Advisory Committee looked at in order to analyze that? For instance, some of the things I'm hearing have to do with deductibles specifically, and some of the rate costs that that GIC offered.
All that's available on their website, and most of the members went back and investigated, looked at their website. It had the rates, the current rates up through June 30th, and the plan options.
Was that reviewed by a committee?
Yes.
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 It was.
Yes.
Reviewed and discussed. Some of the things that come up is the fact that you're locked in with them for 3 years if you want to get out. Once you're in for 3 years. The other thing
Right.
that's very different about the GIC is they have the ability to change plan within your insurance plan. Let's say you signed up for you signed up for the Harvard Pilgrim plan under GIC. Well, they can change your benefit package as the year goes along. Middle of the year, after 1 month.
And has that been their history?
They do make changes as they go along, yes. Yes, every year they do that. But that's how they do their cost savings.
Okay.
That's one of the biggest things. And, and this year, we were able to talk to some people, well, actually through Brian, through our consultants, we were able to talk to listen to some people that are leaving the GIC, after being in it. And one of the bigger reasons for leaving is that you really give up your flexibility. In return for that, yes, there are some savings, no question about it. I would not,
And I'm not talking about savings to the town. You understand that my
No,
concern is.
and that's one of the
to the
things we looked
employee.
at. But one of the big things that turns the employee away is when you start talking about, I sign up to have X amount of things in my insurance plan. And come December 1st, they decide, well, you know what? Going forward from December 1st, you don't have that anymore, now you have this in your particular plan. And that was a real turnoff.
Okay.
And so that's how we kind of ended up saying, well, because we were really looking GIC right out the gate. When we saw our increase from Harvard Pilgrim, how large it was going to be. And again, we're not here to knock down Harvard Pilgrim. They've served us well. The majority of that increase comes from our utilization, which is something we have no control over. The rate increase that we're looking at from Blue Cross Blue Shield, it's basically, again, they're rating us according to what our utilization was. And last year, our utilization was poor.
And that's why I asked, because
Yeah.
when we spread out that utilization across hundreds of thousands of state employees
Exactly.
and municipal employees, sometimes you can either reap a benefit, or maybe that is washed a little bit, normalized, if you would, across a broader cross-section of people. So let me do this. I've asked some of the questions that I wanted to ask, but I want to go to the other board members before we get too far along. I'll go to Dean and let
Yeah.
Dean.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. No, I think we do every year, Kelly, the committee, the employees, nice job. You do the best you can. This is something that it's very disheartening every year, and, we kind of say the same things all the time. Now, 16.5% higher than our current rates. As far as to the employees, what's that cost? Kelly, take your time.
Let's see. To the employee, I mean, what's the individual?
$1 a week.
Is
It's a
this
little over
correct
$100.
one?
It's like
Yeah.
On a
little
family
over-
plan.
It's about $100 a month.
$100 a month.
Yeah, the
Roughly.
individual, 190 to 222. No,
And that,
well,
that-
the family plan's $84
Okay.
difference.
That's what I meant, a family,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
The,
and for single,
20,
Cal-
about $30 for the individual,
$30, okay.
so, and that's for the employee, on a monthly basis.
Yep. And it's for the retirees, it's the same thing, or less.
The
Actually,
retirees is going to be slightly, actually, the savings that we're going to realize is in the retiree section. There's
That's
approximately a
significant.
$77,000 savings compared to Harvard Pilgrim and Blue Cross Blue Shield. And that is going to be realized under the retiree plan.
there's
Individual
Medics.
retiree.
Medics
Medics.
3.
It's going to be
and
Medics 3, which is,
We gave some dollar figures for the other plans. I'm just curious what the dollar figure is that the
That's
retirees
about,
net.
for the employee, it would be about, for the retiree, it would be about $30 a month.
Less.
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 Yes.
It's a big savings for the retirees.
76
Yeah.
a month.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's gonna be, for the retiree, it's $76.15
Yes.
without contribution for the retirees.
Okay, what does
In
that mean,
savings.
without
And
contribution?
savings.
Before the
savings.
contribution goes, before the savings goes. So the reduction would be about $76.
Okay.
For the
On the-
retirees, Peter?
On the
Yeah.
full premium.
Okay.
And that was another thing that we, when you're making these kind of changes, I mean,
It's balancing, right?
well, not only that, we also tried to look at things that, the GIC is very, very different. That's another thing that came into effect. There were no plans in there that were exactly like we had with Harvard Pilgrim or what we were looking at with Blue Cross Blue Shield. One of the other things is we also wanted to look at something that we could transition people. We just finished in January doing a renewal with the retirees. Okay, so now we're gonna do it again. But the one thing about the plan that we're looking at is, we should be able to do this seamlessly. It will not involve the retirees, we can just bring their information over into Blue Cross Blue Shield. Whereas with the active worker, we're gonna have to do those meetings. We've been reassured by Blue Cross Blue Shield that they will put enough people into the effort so that we can get this done and everyone will be educated.
Okay.
There are some little different savings that we looked at in Blue Cross Blue Shield too. They have some areas where, not only based on the cost, but we could save some money by choosing to use a lab that's different. They have some lab systems, am I correct, where there is no copay. Okay, so the employee can take advantage of that. Their company pays the whole freight, there is no copay. So those are kind of some of the things that we looked at going to Blue Cross Blue Shield. The other thing, the biggest thing that impressed us with Blue Cross Blue Shield was they were willing to give us a trend guarantee. Okay, so going forward next year, not talking about our utilization, but they were willing to guarantee us that we're 6%?
I believe it was 6.
6.9.
6.9, that would be the highest trend. So no matter what, if our utilization stays exactly the same, the highest increase in health insurance going forward next year would be 6.9%.
On the,
And nobody else was offering that.
on the assumption of the existing utilization, if that
Right.
utilization went up, could that number go up?
Well, no, trend is the
Trend.
rate of medical inflation. So
Yeah.
when we calculate the claims,
Sir, excuse me, can you sit up front, please?
Sure.
So people can hear you. Thank you.
trend is a term to describe medical inflation, and you use that when you figure out the renewal rate. So you look at the claims, and then you have to factor in the rate of medical inflation. When we can only put a cap on what we will use as a medical inflation rate. So if the rate of medical inflation is higher, you'd be protected by a no greater than a 6.9. Now, the trend may be lower, and if it's lower, we'll use a lower number, but it won't exceed 6.9, so that
Okay,
is
and that's separate and distinct from utilization.
correct. We're not, by law, we're not allowed to guarantee.
Nobody's allowed to.
Right.
All right, I just wanted to understand it.
Yeah,
I want to go
Bill.
back to Dean and
Yeah,
give him
okay.
back his time.
So Peter, Cal, in summary, the increase when we go to Blue Cross Blue Shield, which is the Cadillac, the increase would be $84 per month for a family, more, and $30.
Approximately $30
right.
for the individual.
And for the retirees, they save about $76.
Yeah,
per-
I believe it was a decrease of 18%.
Yeah, and as far as like co-pays, doctors, hospitals, they can go to the same physicians and all that stuff?
Yeah, Blue Cross is, they cover the state, yeah. I would not expect anyone to have to look for a new doctor
Okay.
with Blue Cross Blue Shield. They're just, any doctor that's probably Harvard Pilgrim is also a Blue Cross Blue Shield doctor. I can't say there might be one, but I doubt that there is any.
Disruption, right?
Yeah,
And
Not
the insurance
yet, 'cause we
committee,
can
can I
have
ask, what was the vote on that?
unanimous
Unanimous?
to make the move.
Yeah.
Okay. And just getting back to
Sure.
that other thing, sir. So this year, it's gonna be 16%, right? And next year, that's 6.9?
No, next year, we're not allowed to guarantee what the renewal increase will be. The only thing we can guarantee is when we go to price it, we won't exceed a 6.9% rate of medical inflation in our calculations. We'd probably be lower
That's one of the
because
factors.
rates of medical inflation in our book of business are on the downside.
Just for, if I may.
Please.
Medical, a trend factor is basically taking the claims you have today and assuming that those same claims are gonna repeat themselves. And so next year, how much would it cost the insurance company to pay for those exact same claims? And if the trend is 6.9, then they'll figure they're gonna have to pay at least 6.9. If the medical inflation rate is ends up being 9%, you're protected at the 6.9. But then what else happens, you could still have, you can't guarantee your utilization.
Right,
Yeah,
right. Yeah, we don't know who's going to be sick tomorrow or next.
right.
No, and
exactly.
in this year, in fairness to Harvard Pilgrim, I mean, they were paying out, I mean, just as an example, they were paying out $1.25 and taking in $1. No insurance plan is gonna lose money. I mean,
Right.
you might get them to break even, but they're not gonna lose money.
We had a couple of.
That's where we are with utilization. We have some serious cases going on. We have no idea if they're gonna continue. We don't have any idea if we're gonna add to that. And it doesn't, if you saw the breakdowns, if you wanted to check with Kelly, I mean, you could see the utilization. There's, healthcare is just really out of control. And some of this, the increases has to do with the Affordable Care Act, which we have no way of controlling. They tell you what it's going to be. They just add it in.
So 2.5%
We
About 2.5%
on top of.
Okay,
We also looked at, we requested bids from Tufts and Fallon, and they looked at our utilization, and they just didn't think they'd be able to bring anything that was,
more
even-
competitive.
More
more
competitive.
competitive, so
Exactly.
they refused to
Okay.
submit a quote this year.
So
which
as
is
far
not a
as,
bad
as far
year.
as this utilization, I mean, we can't be, we have younger people, we have older people, we have people with catastrophic illnesses and diseases. I
Yeah.
mean, the other towns have to be the same, so when we say utilization,
know,
is it
it's-
unique in
it's-
Milford?
No, it's not unique to Milford, but, it goes in cycles. I mean, we've just come off a cycle where we had very small increases, as you know. And then all of a sudden, one year and,
In the same way that can hit a family, it hits this
exactly,
insurance group.
exactly, Bill.
Yeah,
Yes.
I can tell you from my years of experience of dealing with just municipal business, that the municipal book of business is typically an older age group. They are typically higher utilizers compared to a high-tech company or something. So it's not unusual to see a lot of fluctuations in the municipal market because it is an older population.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, thank you, Kelly,
Right.
Peter.
Yeah, first, let me thank the Insurance Advisory Committee, because, every year you come before us and give us this information, and I really appreciate the work that you do. It's thankless work. More often than not, you bring us bad news, and, it's not mutually exclusive to the town of Milford. I mean, it's the state of healthcare and insurance across the country. But I really appreciate the work you do looking into this and bringing the information that you do and the plans that you do. And I think if you look back over time and compare us with other communities, we compare quite favorably. And I think that's in large part to the work that this committee does. A couple of questions. When you mention this utilization, just trying to get a sense, are we talking about a few cases with very high treatment, or are we
That would be
talking
the best
about
description.
a larger spread of more people?
Under 10 cases
Okay,
with high cost,
okay, so something like that that's
They-
gonna
Very high cost.
Very
skew,
high.
very high.
skew you, so
I
it's,
guess, looking at the reports, and Brian, correct me if I'm incorrect on this, there's a benchmark amount of 145,000. Anybody that exceeds that amount becomes a high claim user. Last year, I believe the utilization was around 455,000 for those that went over the 145,000. This year, we were 1.1 or 1.2 million?
Around 1.8 million.
Oh, was it 1.8?
1.8 million.
1.8 million.
but in terms of individuals taking up that number, it's a small.
Very small group.
It's a
Okay.
very small group,
All
but
right,
we
yes.
might have a lot that are just under that,
Yeah,
and they don't meet the
Yeah.
criteria, there might be 144,000.
okay.
We don't know how many are in that group, but just the high, anybody that went over 145,000, we went from one year at 455,000 in utilization to 1.8 million. it was not a good year.
And, I mean, obviously, our hearts go out to the families that have to deal
Absolutely.
with that.
Yep.
And that's the real cost of this. And hopefully, those folks, the health insurance that everybody's providing for is, a great benefit to those families going through that. So that's why we do this.
We always have someone in that category.
Sure,
And
sure.
that changes year to year.
Yeah. Just a little bit of a clarification for the medics, because you mentioned a savings about
Yes, that's what
70.
about 77,000.
77,000
Yes,
savings for
in the medics,
senior plans.
based on what we currently have with Harvard Pilgrim.
Oh, I'm sorry, you said 77,000?
Thousand,
Oh, well, what was the 76 number you were talking
That
about? Was
was-
that your monthly
That
premium?
That's the monthly.
Yeah, that's the
That per
monthly
person.
premium.
That's the monthly premium.
That's-
Okay, is that the gross before you divide it between the town and the employee?
Correct.
Okay, because I don't
Full
want,
contribution.
okay, because I don't want folks to think that,
No.
their bill is gonna go down $76
No,
when.
before
There's
contribution.
something like $40.
It's a,
I don't
it's
remember what
a,
the contribution
I-
is.
think it's
is
about
the
30.
senior a 70-30 split also?
On this particular plan is a 50/50.
50/50.
Okay, 50/50.
And
Say about the savings will be,
Okay, so the
I
savings could be
believe
about
it's-
$35, $40.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Just so that's clarified, because I don't want folks to think, oh, my goodness, my bill's gonna go down $76, and then, it comes in. So that's the gross numbers that we're talking about, and then from there,
yes.
there's the division between the amount that the town pays and the amount that the employee or the retiree pays.
Correct.
Yeah, no, it is, the last question that I had, is this going to affect the mitigation program that we have in effect?
Speaking to Town Council Moody, we checked with him, and I believe he submitted a letter to the board. If we do any kind of benefit structure change, which this would have some slight structure change, we would have to enact the Section 21 for the Public Employee Committee.
Right, so we have to go to that committee, but my memory was when, I think it was when we switched over to the Harvard Pilgrim.
We do have some mitigation money that
Yes,
was involved.
right, there was some.
Some of it
mitigate-
was given right away, and some of it we still have, right?
And folks could
The last
apply
one.
for it, so like
Yeah.
if their deductible were met, they could
Yes.
submit all their
Yes.
medicals, and I think they get a payment of $500.
For our high claims users,
Yes.
yes.
Okay, so number one, I guess, is, are there still funds available
Yes.
for that?
Yes, there
are.
is.
Okay,
We have-
and number two, do the parameters of that program change, or is it still the
We-
same type of thing? If folks' deductibles get
I think
used,
that-
can they still apply and get that money? Even though we're going to a different plan?
Brian, I think we hammered that out at the PEC, between the PEC, and then Jerry came up with the formula. I presume that the same thing will happen. Stay in place.
Okay.
It would it would stay in place as
Okay,
is.
because the intent was.
And there's a form
as-
on
as
the
long as
website,
that-
on
Yeah,
the
the
town's
intent was,
website.
and I forget what the dollar was that was allocated to that portion of it, but the intent was that that program would remain in effect until those dollars are exhausted.
Exactly.
Yes, there was $100,000.
Okay, so the, the little twist on it is now we're moving from Harvard Pilgrim to Blue Cross, but it sounds as though that fund can still be in place for at least
Yep.
similar or maybe the same type of benefit.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, we do that with the high, what are some of our...
I mean, that's a nice benefit, to have.
We've helped out several people.
Yeah, it's,
It's a nice benefit to
Yeah.
have.
When they've gone over their max, we've, yep.
Yeah, the trend that I've seen probably since, I don't know, I can't, time goes so fast, '09, '10, the companies are drawing back, the deductibles are higher, the co-pays are higher, and, in my business, where I do bankruptcy work, a lot of it, 5, 10 years ago was credit cards, and I want to say in the last 2 to 3 years, people are coming forward with medicals they can't pay.
Oh, I
Because the
believe that.
insurance company's not making the payment.
outrageous.
And now
It
the
is.
medicals is. So this is a real problem that people are having, on a day-to-day basis. And all we can do is the best that we can do in terms of getting the plans that are out there. But, I don't know, I'm prejudiced, but, insurance companies and oil companies, the only one that can just raise up without any regard for effect on people. And the executives still get, multi-million-dollar contracts, and we're all funding it. So they're the ones laughing all the way to the bank.
By today's standards, this is still it's a good plan. The deductibles are not unaffordable.
Yeah, but the key is what you're saying, today's standards, which are a
Yeah,
lot
right.
different than 5 years ago or
Right.
10 years ago.
Right.
I think people expect, look, I'm paying all this money in health insurance, I have to go to the doctor to get something done, and I still gotta
Still have
pay
to
all
pay.
this money to the doctor? You know what I mean? Meanwhile, the exec for Blue Cross, what did he get, $20 million when he went out or something?
I don't know, we can ask him, he's right here.
Not you, some, Harvard Pilgrim, these guys get these, obscene amounts of money. It's just, to me, the system is so askew. But, we're the low ones on the totem pole. We have to deal with the actual administration, with people, with real problems with employees. And, again, I think that your committee just does a great job in dealing with what we have and getting the best deal for everyone in the town. That's it, Mr. Chairman. That's my rant on insurance companies.
That's okay, I love to hear it.
I was going to
That
add
was a good
oil
rant.
companies and
ask
insurance
one
companies, sure.
question?
I was going to add,
When Bill asked for the clarification, which was good, as far as the savings that are retirees, I think, sir, you said $40? Is that what you said?
Approximately
I
35.
think it's about 30
'Cause
30
we
to
split
35.
it. We split it, so.
Yeah, I only had the premium, the total cost without the contribution from the town.
And that's good. I mean, that's good. Things are going down, but, if a family, in the same vein, family has 2 or 3 children, a couple of kids
Oh.
in school, I mean, that $100 or $84 is a lot of money. But it
a
is
lot
what
of
it
money.
is.
Bill, who you adding into the pile? I want to know who's going in the pile with the
with the insurance
insurance and oil
companies,
companies.
attorneys in class action law.
Oh, wait a minute. Oh,
It's a
geez.
class action law.
Brian.
Attorneys at this table are accepted.
But having said that, a little levity never hurt.
No.
Jerry, I just want to ask you to remind us of the process that we go through. If you could just walk us through that, should this recommendation.
Yeah, presuming that you want to go along with the advisory committee's recommendation, you should probably take a vote tonight to authorize the temporary treasurer, myself, and the advisory committee to take whatever steps are necessary to implement the plan under Chapter 32B. There's a couple of approaches. In fact, I want to talk to this group afterwards, if your board votes this. A couple of approaches to take that can speed it up a little bit, because the May 1st deadline is coming up pretty tight if we follow the process precisely. So I have a couple of ideas on that. But again, your vote simply would be authorize the temporary treasurer and myself as your labor representative and the Insurance Advisory Committee to undertake whatever it needs to be done to put this in place.
Okay.
Could I
Thank you,
just
Jim.
make a clarification on the senior plans? Those will have to wait until June 1st, because
Yes.
the federal government requires that they give people a 60-day notice.
Okay. All right. And Peter, if I heard you correctly, some of this is a result of, and you said approximately 2% we can attribute to the Affordable Care Act?
2.5.
2.5%.
Yeah, and it looks like it'll be the same next year, or could be
Oh,
more.
definitely, could be
We just
more.
don't know. They just add it right in, and
It's right on the top.
it's
Okay.
right on top of everything else. Yep.
Is that a part of the 19.8% on Harvard Pilgrim as
part of
well as the
everything.
Blue Cross? Everything across the
Everything, yep.
board, about
It's in there on
2.5%.
everyone. Yep.
Okay, all right. So I think at this point, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion, Mr. Chairman, that's going to Jerry's recommendation.
Well, the first one would be to accept the recommendation of the Insurance Advisory Committee to, okay,
I'll second that
all
motion.
right. I'll also vote in favor. That's unanimous. The next one is a motion to authorize town council, the town treasurer, and the Insurance Advisory Committee under Chapter 32B to meet with the unions and
Motion.
do whatever is necessary to move forward with this proposal.
Second it.
I'll also vote in favor. That's unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good
Kelly, you
luck.
get to sit there.
Oh, good.
Oh, Rick, no table or anything for
Thank
No
you.
retaires won't switch till June.
the table for the candidates?
They can't. You gotta give 60-day notice to them.
Thank you.
Sure, you got one.
Oh, what is that?
I didn't need it. We can get one if you want to step back.
Kelly, if you.
Got
you'd
15
like to
minutes.
Take a break?
Thank you very much.
You, if
Yeah.
you want to go right to it. Happy to take a recess.
I just want to take a.
Okay,
get it.
yes, please.
let's take a
So
look.
we'll take a 5-minute recess?
Yeah, let's take a look.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'll get one. Let's get a table. Yeah.
Okay, now we're about to begin town treasurer candidate interviews. And the first interview is Kelly Capice. And we're going to go through, I think I just want to, as a matter of process, just go through a little bit of the resume. You're currently residing in Uxbridge. Information you provided, you have 27 years of public service experience. You've been town treasurer, temporary or acting town treasurer since June of this year. I'm sorry, June of last year. And you were assistant town treasurer from 1992 to 2013 and filled various other roles, departmental clerk, typist. You're a graduate of Milford High, and it says you attended Mass Collectors and Treasurers Association certification courses. You received those certifications?
Working towards certification, which takes 3 years.
Okay, so you're attending now?
I've
Okay.
completed year one.
Okay. And, I don't know, that's a high-level summary, and I'll let the members and yourself represent it, but what I'd like to do is allow you to say anything that you'd like as an introductory that may or may not be on the resume. It's up to you.
Okay. Well, first of all, I want to thank the board for the opportunity to come in and interview today. I also want to thank the board for the opportunity to serve as temporary treasurer for the last 9 months. It's been a really good experience, an unexpected one, but I've been enjoying it, and I appreciate the opportunity. Anyway, my name is Kelly Capice. I grew up in Milford, graduated Milford High School, as you see. My parents still live here. I moved to Uxbridge a couple of years ago. But other than that, I went through, lived here the majority of my life. And let's see, I started working for the town while I was in high school. That was my co-op job. In 1986, I was hired by Tony Rando, the treasurer, and I have on my resume, I was clerk typist. It was a, part-time thing to assist the office staff. And when a position became available after I had graduated, a position became available for departmental clerk, and I was hired again by Tony Rando for that position in 1988. And I've continued to work in the office. I was promoted to the position of assistant town treasurer in 1992 when my predecessor, Joanna Gonzalez, retired. And I worked with Tony very closely. And then in 1997, I believe it was, when Barbara Ogier was elected, I assisted with the, helping her transition into her new position, and have worked very closely with Barbara over the 17 years as her assistant. I enjoy being an assistant. I, learned a lot from the treasurers I've worked for, and hopefully that they found me to be a good assistant. And then in the past 9 months, we have, since I was appointed as temporary treasurer, I think we've done a good job in our office to make it as seamless and a smooth transition as possible. I have, got right into it and tried to learn everything I needed to learn. I, usually was involved in most of the processes going forward, but this was the first time I was responsible for it. So, we just finished our audit in February. So, this has just been, a learning experience. I've, always worked with the auditors, but now it's been my responsibility to deal with. As I put in my resume, I have got 1 year of the classes through the Mass Collectors and Treasurers Association. out of the way. I have 2 more years left till I can take the certification test. And I've been, in this office, in the treasurer's office, my whole working career. I take pride in that office. I want to see the office succeed, and I want to be a part of that. And I think I've learned enough over the years, being involved with different processes, that I'm, ready to take over as treasurer. I think it's been going smooth, and there's more to learn, and I'm willing to learn whatever I need to learn and put the hours in to do it, which I've been doing.
Okay,
And I guess that's about it.
all right. I also want to note that you've received letters of recommendation from Brian Boyle, one of our health consultants, also from Barbara Ogier, the former town treasurer, and also from David Consigli, for whom you've worked as a clerk for the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Yes.
So with that, I'll start the questions, and this time I'll switch gears. I'll go to Brian first. Normally I look to
Okay.
my left, but I'll start with Brian. And Brian, I'll let you begin. Any
you.
question you have?
I've got to say, when I looked over the packages this weekend and came across your resume, I found it particularly impressive, and I'll tell you why. And both you and the chairman have touched on some things. But, when I look at just the employment history, and you talk about, joining the treasurer's office in 1986 out of high school, staying there, 1988, becoming a departmental clerk, improving on that to 1992 to the assistant town treasurer, up until 2013, where you became the temporary treasurer, and now today, where you're seeking the full-time appointment. To me, that just shows a tremendous level of commitment and dedication to this particular office. Now, clearly, during that time period, there were different people that you worked with. There were 2 treasurers, right? Tony
Yes.
and Barbara.
Correct.
What do you think is the single most important characteristics that you might have drawn from Tony and Barbara as you watched them and worked with them in the office?
I would say both of them, definitely their strength and their both very dedicated to the town and very hardworking. I consider myself a hard worker, will do what I need to do to get it done, and I worked well with them, and I believe that we worked well together, me as their assistant, because we had the same work ethic. And just, I guess, their strength and their, I can't think of the word I'm thinking of, trying to come up with, but very independent thinkers, very hardworking individuals.
And over those years, just tell me a little bit about the various aspects of the different functions and jobs that the treasurer's office has that you've had contact with.
Okay. When I started, I was very involved in the weekly accounts payable process. It was done a lot different than it is today, but I wasn't very involved in that. When I first started, we didn't have we had payroll. We had a payroll company doing our payroll. I've been involved in 3 now software changes and implementation of payroll packages. And 2 of them, I believe I was still departmental clerk, and it was a lot of hours, a lot of hard work, and a learning curve. And I enjoyed it. It was a big task, but I enjoyed being part of the process. As assistant, as I met, as presented earlier, the assistant, the majority of my job has to do with health insurance, the administration of the health insurance, not as much negotiations, but the actual administration process, dealing with employees, enrolling employees, dealing with COBRA laws, payroll deductions. I work very closely, would work very closely with the payroll clerk to get deductions, through payroll and process the invoices. It was very hands-on. As I did, as assistant, attend many insurance advisory committee meetings, so I kind of knew what that whole process was about, and working, working for the treasurer, you learn as after the meetings, going over the notes, being updated on what is going on. I've been very involved over the years with the insurance. I, get a lot of calls from retirees with, concerns. Last year when we had the Fallon senior change with the Reliant Medical Group, I had numerous calls. It was, spending a lot of days on the phone trying to ease people's mind that we were going to take care of the situation, that we were looking into doing something. And I think we did a great job bringing Tufts in to seamlessly move these people to a different insurance plan that allowed them to stay with the doctors that they wanted to stay with at a price that they could afford. And actually, we had a reduction, so it was a win-win. We get a lot of most of the day-to-day things have to do in our offices, a weekly payroll that we do. We still do the accounts payable on a weekly basis. So we're dealing with vendors, we're dealing with employees, we're dealing with retirees. We are responsible for the administration of the health benefits for all the retirees on the town's retirement system, as well as the Mass Teachers Retirement System. We're dealing with 2 retirement boards. And, trying to think. That's pretty much the day-to-day. And then the treasurer's responsibilities as far as cash reconciliation and filing tax returns, getting the W-2s out. It's our job. I came in here on a Saturday and spent about 4 or 5 hours printing out W-2s. And then we had to do the 1099s. It's a lot of things that come out of our office, including the weekly payroll, that I have a, really good office staff in there that, we kind of took this temporary, being appointed temporary. We all met, we all decided everybody needed to step up to the plate and do what we need to do to make it a successful transition. So we didn't have a choice. It has, we had to get payroll out and had to, make sure that things got done.
All right, let me just jump to Dean, and then we'll come back to you. Just
All right, you all right with that question?
I'll have another
Okay.
opportunity too.
Okay. Cal, I want to say too that, you've been in that office and you've been a dedicated employee, and I appreciate all the work. I know many people have talked to me about the way you've talked to people with the insurance issues and concerns and all that, so certainly want to thank you for that, because that's most important. You asked me before if we had any questions. We just started writing some questions now. What do you feel is your, you may have said it, but maybe say it again. What do you think is your greatest asset?
That I bring to the table
Yes.
is my dedication to the town. I was not seeking employment as a treasurer in other communities. I was never expecting to be sitting in this chair. The opportunity presented itself, and at first, with it being an elected position and me not living in town anymore, I never even expected to have the opportunity to apply. Once I got into the position, I realized that, I had the experience necessary and that, you know, to move forward into the treasurer's position. I was enjoying the challenge. Sometimes you don't know what's good for you until it happens. Like I said, I was never looking elsewhere for the opportunity to move forward as treasurer. I guess I was, I've been very happy with the town of Milford, and, you know, happy as the assistant. But I've been enjoying, you know, I have enjoyed the opportunity, and the opportunity presented itself. And I, you know, feel that now is the time for me to, you know, I probably still have like 15 to 20 years left with the town. And now would be a good, you know, if I'm gonna progress, this would be the time to do it. What I bring to the table is my loyalty to the town. And, you know, if unfortunately I don't get this position, I don't really have any anticipation of, you know, I want to see the town of Milford's treasurer's office be successful, and, you know, and,
Okay. As you know, things change all the time.
yes.
How do you see the role of treasurer, like, in the future? How do you see that role?
Well, I guess it would depend. I've had this discussion with, you know, some other individuals that have been asked similar questions, and basically looking at other communities, to change the treasurer, maybe to a treasurer collector. I don't know, you know, what people's, you know, what the board's wishes are down the line. My opinion would take changing other department roles as well. To take on different responsibilities would mean some transition of other responsibilities to other departments. We do handle a lot on, you know, there's 4 full-time employees in that office, and we're all working, you know, they're all working positions. This is not a position where it's just title only. It is a long day every day. And as the other girls in the office have responsibilities that, you know, fortunately I'm able to lean on them. I know they know their stuff, and we work well together as a team.
Okay. Okay for now, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Thanks, Kelly.
Thank you, Dean. You know, you talked a length about some of the various job responsibilities. If you could, what percentage of it do you feel is HR-related versus, and what I mean by that is health benefits, that type of thing, versus what would be a traditional treasurer's position in a community?
I would say most of the HR, other than negotiating with the health insurance and some dealing with employees, most of it falls on the assistant position. That is, there's a large portion of the assistant position that has to do with HR.
So that's been a large part of your role since 1992?
Correct.
Okay. And it's the bulk of what your work has been?
I mean, other, you know, assisting the treasurer with the tasks at hand, whether it be, you know, a borrowing or, you know, assisting with going over the budget, preparation for that, or helping with the annual town report information. Most of the day-to-day, you know, tasks of the assistant is health insurance related and benefit related.
Okay. So what would you say, just in concert with that, what would you say is the steepest part of the learning curve? What aspects of the treasurer's job would you say is where you need to grow and the experience you need to get behind you?
Okay.
What types of activities, what type of work, the bonding that we do, whatever it is that you think the treasurer's role is uniquely?
Right. The first thing I did was enroll in the Treasurer's Collector's School last August for the year 1 of the certification. I thought that would be in my best interest, and would like to attend, you know, plan on attending. The Mass Collectors and Treasurers Association have other conferences throughout the year that have, you know, speakers, usually a topic, specific topic, which are very informative. I've actually attended a lot of those over the years with the treasurer, depending what the topic of discussion was. And I found them to be very informative.
But beyond the certifications, the actual work that the treasurer does in the treasurer's role, what's more unique than the assistant, because they're handling
They're-
much of the HR benefits and health?
They completely different responsibilities as far, as assistant, you assist the treasurer with everything from collecting information on getting ready to go for a borrowing, or being involved, taking, in speaking with the banks regarding that, assisting with cash reconciliation. A lot of it I was doing as, assisting, and now it's my responsibility. So a lot of it I've had to dive into a little further, ask some questions. And I do try to work very closely with the other department heads and employees, so I'm not afraid to ask a question. And everybody's been fantastic through the transition. I would say mostly it would be the cash reconciliation would be a different thing that's on a continuous basis. Bonding, which I'm getting information on. We're going to have to do some short-term borrowing soon for the Woodland project, and before we go out to sell a bond for that. There's a lot more financial, I guess more financial as opposed to HR.
Okay. Brian? Thank you.
How comfortable are you in reaching out and working with other department heads, not only in the town hall, but also at the school department?
I'm very comfortable with that. I've had a lot of good luck over the years, having good relationships, working relationships with most of the departments. Everybody's usually very helpful and responsive, and I'm not too proud to ask a question, and I do try to provide information, when it's requested of our office. We do, we try to work harmoniously with everyone. I've prided myself in having good communication skills with all of the departments, and I know usually who to go to when I need something answered.
And what would be your, I guess, philosophy in terms of, dealing with the general public, whether it's, employees or just, regular citizens? What kind of policy would you or do you have if you're in your office and working on things, or if people come in? How do you handle that on a day-to-day basis?
That's always been an open door policy. If you're in the middle of something and somebody comes in, whether it be an employee, a retiree, a taxpayer that might be on tax title and wants some information, they're welcome to come in, and we'll provide them with any information that we have available, or take a name and address or name and phone number, and if we need some time to investigate it, or possibly have to refer them to a different department if they don't have the right answer. Most of the time, unfortunately, in a payroll and AP and health insurance department, per se, they're not coming in to just talk about the weather. They're usually upset about something, have a problem, have a payroll issue, a deduction issue, want to work out some sort of tax title plan, have an issue with the health care. If they have a claim issue, we're more than happy to. I think we've had very good response from the employees and retirees. We usually get a lot of good feedback that they appreciate that we do try to be helpful and don't put people off. We try to get to the bottom and solve their issue, and whether it be 9 o'clock in the morning or they walk in at 1 minute of 5. That's what we're there to do. We're there to serve the public. And I take a lot of pride in that.
What has been your level of exposure and experience in terms of the tax title and tax foreclosure aspect of the treasurer's position?
Right before the tax collector, Paula Fortin, retired, we went over and started dealing with the subsequent taxes being turned over to the treasurer's office at that time. I've been dealing, I just had one this afternoon calling to see what the current payoff amount was, and we've had quite a few just in the 9 months actually come in and pay off some tax title properties.
And is that something that you've worked with over the years and have experience in?
Yes.
Experience in as being a part of that office?
Yes. We would field the calls. We would get the information from the treasurer. Sometimes we would contact the person back ourselves, or put the call through to the treasurer. But when there was a payoff amount, there's certain state forms that have to be filed. One that we send to the registry of deeds to take the lien off the property, and the other one goes to the tax collector's office. I mean, that was something that, myself or one of the other girls in the office, mostly myself, prepared, so we were used to the forms and the process.
One of the things that, I think Bob Rozier did exceptionally well was compile, analyze, and constantly evaluate the long-term debt schedule of the town, incorporating, debt that we have currently on the books.
Yes.
And looking forward to other potential projects.
Correct.
And how possible debt may impact the town budget. What has been your level of experience and exposure to that aspect of the job?
As far as the debt portion of it is concerned, I basically was responsible as assistant for processing the debt payments on the warrant when they came due. I was very involved in, we have a book with all the itemized debt, and I was, I had my hand on it a lot as well. Barbara has left me very well set up with spreadsheets and with, the full picture. So this year when I did our year-end reports, I just updated everything. We did a rebonding of some debt. She had started in I believe it was June 15th was the day we rebonded, and I took care of it after that from that point. When the first payments were due, the payments for the rebonding itself, and restructuring the debt schedule somewhat. There's, some of the loans were paid off, some were paid down, the interest rates have changed. So I'm fully comfortable.
And I was going to say, you feel comfortable with that aspect of the job?
Yes, very much so.
Okay.
Very much so.
Let me just
yeah.
jump in. I just want to be able to give everybody fair time.
Okay.
No, I'm okay for now.
Are you okay?
I yield my time to
All right, go ahead, Brian. So actually, I'd like to jump in. In that compiling and analysis, what are, you list yourself as proficient in Excel. Is that on-the-job training that
Yes.
you've gotten on?
Yes.
Any formal training on Excel?
No classes. I will be honest, I learned it all from Barbara Rozier. She is extremely good in Excel.
Okay.
And, I would ask her,
Okay. So I'm just trying to.
kind of self-taught.
Yeah, if we set on a scale of 1 to 10, just Excel as a tool, it's certainly a financial tool, analysis tool, and Brian mentioned analysis. Sometimes we have to give different weight to different things and ask for several variations of the same data, with different emphasis on each. how would you list yourself in terms of skill set on a 1 to 10, in terms of Excel, pivot table capability, any of that? Have you created?
I've created some spreadsheets that I would use as assistant. I have worked with I've been working the last 9 months with the spreadsheets that, a lot of the spreadsheets were just,
Existing.
they're existing, and I've kind of gone forward with them.
Okay.
I haven't really set up any new spreadsheets.
All right, I just wanted to follow up and just follow a line of thought that Brian had led me down. Prior to August, when you began looking for certifications, what level of training, what education, courses, or things had you taken in, say, the last 5-year process?
In 5 years, I've attended a lot of the Mass Collectors and Treasurers Association's conferences.
Okay.
They usually have, I think 3 other conferences a year that are one-day conferences, and I would attend with the treasurer. Different topics, Social Security, somebody from the Social Security Administration from one, when the retirement reform went through, that there was members of PERAC came out and did a presentation. Trying to think, there was one with the State Treasurer's Office that I attended on local aid and information like that. As far as the other, they also offer a treasurer staff school, which I haven't attended in quite a few years.
Okay.
It's just basic information on, more for newer employees as staff.
Okay, all right. Come back to Dean. Dean, anything you want, or?
If there was, going forward, Kelly, if there was one thing that you would need training on, or to really, get up to speed as far as a major function of the treasurer's position, what would that be?
One of the things I have not done yet is a borrowing, specifically A to Z. We've been gathering information on, we have basically just one short-term note out there at this time, other than the long-term debt. We're in preparation for some more short-term borrowing and, bonding some long-term debt. And I have been gathering information on that, getting some information from the town clerk's office, so we can send it into bond counsel. That's one thing I haven't had to process A to Z yet, but it's coming. Most of the stuff that I've done in the past 9 months has been the first time I've seen through from A to Z. And we've been meeting our deadlines and, got all our reporting into the state on time. I ask the questions. I call Barbara Ogier. She's always been very helpful to me in answering any questions I have. The town accountant's been phenomenal in helping, answering questions too, and town council and everybody's,
Okay.
been very helpful.
Okay, thank you, Kel. That's all, Bill.
Yeah, I just wanted to come back to one, I'll go to Brian. Brian.
So when you talk about, these different aspects, you say, well, it's the first time I've done it from A to Z. So the understanding I get when you make that statement is this is really the first time you've done this particular task yourself, totally from start to finish, as the person in charge.
Correct.
So do I take it that some of these tasks, you have been exposed to certain or perhaps many aspects of them, and now the difference is at the position you're at, you're simply integrating all of those individual parts of the project into the complete project?
Absolutely. I've been involved probably in every, I can't think of an aspect of the job that I have come across yet that I haven't been involved in as assistant, whether it being preparing documents or, being involved in meetings or
Well, that's
Being
the
exposed to it.
sense that I get, from looking at your resume and knowing how the office operates and, having, dealing with you in the past. So, I mean, it's not that there's total inexperience in a particular project, but,
Absolutely not.
I think you're being a little harsh on yourself in the sense that, what you're doing right now, yes, you're the one that's responsible and you're doing it from start to finish.
Correct.
But many of these things, you've been familiar and have done a lot of these aspects, maybe on an incremental basis
Yes.
as an assistant or from some of your other capacities.
I think that's what led me to be here tonight. I took on the responsibility as temporary treasurer, and I'll be honest, I was like, ooh, a little nervous. And once I got into the position and, things started to come in across the desk, and I'm like, oh, I know how to do this, or, I haven't been responsible for it, but I know what needs to be done and when the deadlines are, and if I didn't, you just, ask the question. I've been involved pretty much in everything in that office.
Sure.
Being in there 27 years, it's hard not to be.
Right, right,
From,
absolutely.
entering a vendor, to, sitting down with an employee, going over their employee new hire information and going over benefits. If they come in, they had a problem on payroll, they come in, we sit down, we go over, what the issue is and rectify it. There's really not much in there that I haven't been
Yeah, I've got
completely
to.
involved in one
Yeah,
sense or
I've got to
another.
imagine, with that kind of time commitment, and in today's world, you don't find that dedication from employees. Frequently, lots of people are there for a few years and boom, they're off to the next, best and greatest thing. But I've got a sense that, from your time there, it's given you a deep understanding of how that office works and interrelates with all of the other town departments.
Yes, I have that's one thing I could
'Cause I
say is a
imagine
strength.
you-
I have a very good sense of how our office integrates with other offices, what the expectations are. And I pride myself on good communication skills. I don't know if that's coming across tonight, but,
Let me
but,
ask this,
working
let me ask this,
together.
what level of involvement have you had with the Finance Committee or the Capital Improvement Committee?
I've met briefly here and there with the Finance Committee. Over the years, I've, prepared documents to go, and prepared the annual budget to go, move forward to the Finance Committee. I haven't met with the subcommittee chairs per se, but I'm very involved in the processing the budget and what their expectations are. They've been in the, come into the office, usually the chairman, and asked for some information regarding debt, regarding, whatever their question is. And, provided them with that, with whatever they've requested. I haven't had much experience myself with the other committee, but I'm sure that will come in time.
Okay, thank you for now.
Thanks, Frank. Yeah, I just want to give you an opportunity to come back to the percentage of the work that's HR-related, benefits, health, versus, what percentage roughly would you say
The
that the
treasurer's
staff
salary?
within that office administers that type of function versus pure treasurer-type work that you might see in another community?
The treasurer's position itself?
No, the office, the staff
The
that
office.
that office, that the treasurer would have available to him. I'm just trying to parse it out a little bit in terms of
40% maybe,
about
50%?
40, 50, okay.
Excuse
I
me.
just wanted to go back to that one because I didn't hear that, so. Another thing that we're often trying to look at things, to do things better, faster, smarter. I want to give you the opportunity to recall through your position, one of those opportunities where you took something that was problematic, looked to make the effort more productive, maybe make it easier, and where you handled that on your own, maybe. Is there something that comes to mind within your career as the assistant that you had?
well, not to date myself, but when I started in the office, we didn't even have computers in there. We used big green ledger books. So
Sure.
everything we're doing now is faster and more productive. I've been highly involved in the software changes over the past few software companies that we've gone with, learning how to use that software to make our jobs easier. Trying to think of anything else specifically besides.
I'm going to give you an opportunity in about 4 minutes. I'm going to come back to Dean. Then what I want to do is make sure that each candidate has the opportunity to wrap up. So there may be something, if you've forgotten it, please feel free to come back to it.
Okay.
Or if a particular board member hasn't asked you a question that you think might have been important to making sure you talk to, then feel free to do that at that time.
Bill, I'm all set with my
Are you?
questions. Yeah,
All right,
thank
I'll
you.
come back to
Thank you,
Brian.
Kelly.
I'm all set, thank you.
All right. I'll let you close then.
Okay. Well, again, I appreciate the opportunity to come here today, and I've appreciated the opportunity to serve as temporary treasurer for the past 9 months, and I hope I've been serving well, and I wish to continue to do so. I take a vested personal interest in the office and the success of the office, and the success we've done very well as a town, and I want to be a part of that moving forward, and we'll continue to learn. Everybody has to continue to learn, and I'm willing to do whatever is necessary. What I don't know, I'm willing to learn and put the hours in to get things done. But I think we've been, like I said, we've had a good staff. I have a strong staff, and they've been very integral and helpful to me. We have good communications within the department. We all get along very well, which is very helpful, and we try our best to get along with other departments and work together. And I want to definitely see that trend continue within the office. As I said, I was not looking to be in this. I did not expect to be in this position, but the opportunity presented itself, and I've been very comfortable in the role, and I would like to continue. And I'm just asking for the opportunity, and I appreciate the time.
Thank you. And from a personal perspective, let me say that there's no doubt you're a valued employee to this community. And this is, some might consider it bold in terms of a bold move, but you've got a lot of experience in that office. I applaud you for, looking to improve your position. Whether or not, based on the other candidates and the other applicants, it means that you get that. What I want to make sure is that this board at least communicates to you how important they think you've been to this community, and your dedication to the community is understood. So
Well,
I want to thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you, Kelly. Maybe we'll take a slight recess while we wait for the
Yeah.
next candidate. Let
Yep.
Kelly regroup and candidate come in. Thanks.
Thank
Are
you.
we off? All right, in a continuation of the town treasurer applicants' interviews, what I'd like to do is just walk through the process for you that we're going through this evening. We'll give you an opportunity to make an opening statement, introduce yourself. For the benefit of everyone, you're Irene Larrabee.
Correct.
The members will then just rotate through questions that they might have, trying to give
Okay.
each one an opportunity to ask a question and try to balance that out a little bit. And then in the end, if you felt as though maybe we didn't ask or you didn't cover something that you'd like to in closing, we'll give you the opportunity to close as well with that. I see you're currently a resident of Nantucket, is that right?
I actually recently moved to Cumberland, Rhode Island.
Okay, Cumberland, Rhode Island, okay.
Yes.
And you provided your resume and background. You have a bachelor's degree in accounting information systems,
Correct.
and that's from Davenport University. You currently hold, up until from 2007 to 2013, you held the position of Director of Municipal Finance in Nantucket.
With the town and county in Nantucket, I actually moved up within the organization. I started as a budget analyst in 2007,
Okay.
was promoted the following year to assistant finance director, and then became the director of municipal finance in fiscal 2011.
Okay. And you've held various positions, both private and public sector. You've provided some references. One is from the Town and Country manager, Elizabeth Gibson.
Yes.
And you've also provided us various certificates and your transcripts from where you received your bachelor's.
Correct.
Is that correct? Okay. Is there anything I've missed in that we should have in front of us that you think you provided that was missing or that I didn't make reference to?
The only other two items were also reference letters from the budget analyst for the town and county in Nantucket, Martin Angelou, and Debbie Dilworth, who's the assessor.
Okay, so you do have, I'm sorry, I
Yes.
did omit that because it was behind, I had it in the wrong order.
Sure.
You have Deborah Dilworth, who's the current Town of Nantucket assessor,
Correct.
and you also had a letter of reference from Martin, and what's the last?
Angelou.
Angelou,
Yes.
budget analyst for Town of Nantucket. Thank you for
Mm-hmm.
bringing that out. All right, this time I think I'll start to my left, and I'll start with Dean and allow him to begin.
Thanks, Bill.
You're very welcome.
Irene, how are you?
Great. How are you this evening?
Good. Okay. Let me ask you with this question first. What do you know about the town of Milford's finances, the way it's set up?
From what I've seen in the annual report, as far as the structure or as far as finances?
Whatever you wanna tell me.
Okay. As far as the financial picture for the town of Milford, I did read through the annual report. The stabilization fund is extremely healthy. It's one of the healthiest I've seen. Pretty much financially sound. As any town or any city across the Commonwealth, there's always room to improve or change processes if need be. I didn't notice the financial statements, the audited financial statements online, but I did locate the budget that was part of the back of the annual report. The structure that I seen was that it reports into a town administrator, and if I'm incorrect, please correct me, that reports into the Board of Selectmen.
So it's
And
appointed by this board and reports on a day-to-day basis to the town administrator, you're correct.
yes,
Okay. And your resume is quite extensive, and now besides your bachelor's degree, you're also, it says here now, certified public accountant training in progress?
in progress, correct. Basically, I've spent all the money on the books. It's just a matter of signing up for the courses at this point. Because I'm not currently employed, I'm just waiting until I'm established somewhere again, and then I'll pick that right back up.
Okay. In here, I'm just going to, financial analysis, audit, increasing productivity, town's financial policies, administration, long-term strategic planning, debt schedule. Can you touch upon some of those areas that you mentioned on your resume and
Sure.
what you did and your involvement and your responsibility and all that stuff?
Definitely. If I start from when I was the budget analyst, when I first came to the town, it was a brand-new position. Prior to that, it was the town administrator's admin that was doing the budget for the town, as well as the county. It's a dual role because it's one and the same there with the island. So first, when I started doing the budget, it was developing new processes to even do the budget. It was, we'll have a couple meetings, we'll highlight what we need to do with the budget and then move forward. One of the things that I did was actually get into line item budgeting and look at trends and doing trend analysis by line item, making sure that the funding is allocated where it was needed as opposed to where it's always been. And that was a very difficult hurdle in the first year to get through. At that time in 2007, we needed to cut $2.5 to $3 million from the general fund budget because salaries were growing exponentially, health insurance was growing exponentially. So it was also reviewing what programs were increasing in revenues, increasing in what the public was looking for, versus what programs weren't necessarily needed anymore, and where we had economies of scale, where we could combine. And that's one of the things I started as the assistant finance director. I still had budget parameters as well as capital improvement program, and started serving on the audit committee. At that time, we started looking at consolidating town government in Nantucket. The town administrator at the time had 23 direct reports, and it got to the point where it was too astronomical. So we actually streamlined it to 7 direct reports, and that whole initiative took 4 to 5 years to implement. It was basically creating a health and human services agency. Anybody within that agency reported to that person. At a cabinet level, that person reported to the town administrator. Director of Municipal Finance, all the financial aspects would report to the Director of Municipal Finance and then into town administrator. The hardest one was the regulatory boards. We combined, and one that was the most challenging was combining planning with Conservation Commission. We had a Historic District Commission. And I'm trying to think, the fourth one, the Health Department, all went under one agency. And that one took the longest to actually move towards that consolidated environment. There was a lot of infighting within those agencies before they consolidated. So therefore, once they were all together, it became even more so. And then it was tailoring it back, making them understand why this was important for the town to move forward. At that time, as the assistant finance director, I worked with the finance director to find out where the problems were that we could correct immediately in our management letters. Under my predecessor, she was there 10 years. 9 out of the 10 years there was qualified audit opinions, which is not a good thing. We were underneath state watch for grants because of this practice. So I started looking at what areas of the management letter were low-hanging fruit that could be fixed immediately, what would take longer, what required timelines. There wasn't timelines, there wasn't policies. More setting up an infrastructure or structure to finance what needs to get done, what's required by the state, when does it need to be delivered, what reports are needed internally, on what basis. So that was something that wasn't in place that I actually introduced, and they're still using a lot of the timelines today, as well as the policies and procedures.
As you may know, the town of Milford doesn't, we've never gone for a debt exclusion, never had an override. We have a very strong financial team. The financial team is the town accountant, the town treasurer, the fiscal analyst for the finance committee, the FinCom, town administrator. On any given big projects, they meet periodically, they make recommendations to the board on spending, on town meeting articles, and the town treasurer is also responsible for the debt schedule.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the debt schedule, we've been very fortunate that the 2 previous incumbents did a great job with the debt schedule. So when they said, let's say there's a project, say there's a fields project or let's say a pond, roads or something, and it may cost $3 or $4 million. So the affordability to the town, so the treasurer works with the financial team, but the treasurer develops the debt schedule so that can we afford to do this? Everything's within the operating budget, okay?
Okay.
So very important. So for example, we just supported a $30 million, $31 million project, school project at town meeting. That's being done, that's the town share, and we'll also receive probably the same amount from the state as far as education reimbursement for schools. But when we went to town meeting, the treasurer, once again, on the debt schedule, works with our board, talks to us and says, this can be done, this can't be done. The affordability, working with the FinCom, working very closely with the town accountant. So what type of experience have you had with debt schedules in the past? And also maybe tie in forecasting. What do you mean by that? Financial forecasting.
Sure. With the debt schedules, it was something that the treasurer in the town of Nantucket always had in a book that was supplied by First Southwest. It wasn't anything that was automated. So that was something I worked with her to introduce about 2.5, 3 years ago, so that we could actually look at, because we did have some debt exclusion as well as just regular debt that was within the operating budget. So we looked at what portion of that debt was excluded, what portion was truly in our operating budget when it was retiring. And then we also had projects that were coming up, so it was a matter of forecasting our debt. If we know we're going to retire $6 million of debt and we want to do a project in the next 2 years, does that coincide in order to ensure your operating budget remains consistent or smooth when it comes to debt? Prior to that time, it was pretty much a roller coaster because that documentation didn't exist, and we did work on that with every single debt payment schedule for principal and interest going all the way to the retirement of the debt, maintaining it, always looking for opportunities to do advanced refundings. If there was lower interest rates available, we looked at that every year as part of our borrowing schedule. We typically had 2 schedules throughout the year, depending on, our business was very seasonality in the island. So we would always start our projects post-season after August, early September. And then we'd also start projects April to be completed by early May. So we'd start late March, early May. It all depended on what part of our business we were trying to do before the tourist season began. Basically, once May 1st started, now through almost September 1st, we didn't want any activity unless it was absolutely necessary going on the island, unless it pertained to the schools, which were empty during the summer season. So I do have experience with that. I do have experience taking care of Moody's bond rating calls and answering questions they may have. As far as forecasting, the forecasting that I performed was all the financial forecasting for the town as well as the county. Anywhere from the tax rate growing at 2.5%, you needed to have your debt exclusion numbers that you have forecasted out, as well as forecasting new growth with the assessor, forecasting revenues that pertain to your general fund to see if any of those are starting to fall down. One of the things we saw during the recession was a decline in the motor vehicle excise. We didn't receive much local aid from the state, so it didn't decline much. We received about $1.4 million during the recession. It's back up to about 1.7 where it was before the recession. The recession hit the island in 2008, early 2009 for fiscal year. One of the things that we also changed was forecasting our revenues first before we forecasted our operating expenditures to see what we could afford. Instead of going the route of forecasting your operating expenditures, then realizing you don't have enough revenue to fit within that, now you're looking at budget deficits, budget gaps. The press loves that type of information. Instead, we look at, when we're doing our forecasting inside our meetings, is here's how much revenue we have, here's how much we can afford to bring forward as a budget for the next fiscal year, and here's our priorities. And then we do that as a ad hoc budget committee internally. It was represented by the town manager, myself as the director of municipal finance, the school business office manager, the school superintendent, the finance committee chair, the board of selectmen chair, all served on that committee, as well as the chair of the school committee, so that there weren't surprises moving forward for the budget as you went along.
And your municipal budget is how much?
$125 million. The general fund operating budget was about $72 million. The remaining portion of that was attributed to 6 enterprise funds: an airport, a nursing home, 2 different water companies on the island, a sewer enterprise fund, as well as we had a landfill. Because we were isolated on the island, we also had to look at a landfill operation.
Okay, thank you. Thank you,
Welcome.
Mr. Chairman.
All right, I'll go next on this. Just really changing it up. We're going left to right and right to left. When I heard you talking and explaining to Dean about the changes that you had made, it sounds as though you were doing a couple of things. It sounds as though you were trying to drive a reality-based budget rather than having everybody come up with everything they needed and see if there were ever going to be revenues to match. So you can set some false expectations when you do that, and I know the challenge when you do that. But also some of the things that you implemented in terms of the structure and organization also seem to be as much a cultural shift
Yes.
as much process changes that you made. I can imagine how difficult that might have been, where people may not have been as enthusiastic about who the new reporting structure is as what it was yesterday. And so municipalities can face, it's not a franchise of municipalities to face this is the way we always did it.
Correct.
That happens in the private sector as well, but I think maybe there's more of that, folks entrenched a little bit more in municipal government than you might see in the private sector. What were some of the benefits you reaped of that? I'd like you to expand a little bit on the benefits of those changes and where you saw having to drive those types of changes, what you gained from it.
As far as the end result of seeing some of the changes is we did have, when I was a director of municipal finance, we had 3 consecutive unqualified opinions. So by doing what the auditors were looking for and making sure our financial house was sound, that was like the first thing that we drove after. So I think that was part of the results of the work leading up to it, is once you had the consolidated agencies, if there was a question in any one of those agencies, instead of looking to 22 to 23 department heads as well as admins that were supporting them, now you had a structure of 7 that you could go to. And then if you see a consistent issue within one category, such as the regulatory services, you could go in and do training and then explain to a lot of the people in that organization why, as far as from a financial perspective, why things need to be reported in the correct line item, why the budget has changed and what we're looking for. So you can actually give them the roadmap as a whole section per se, as opposed to trying to going out to each individual department. It worked both ways. It seemed that there was more buy-in once there was a different hierarchy that was introduced. As far as with introducing some of the debt schedules, it's helping people understand the Nantucket was debt heavy. So it was, and I say that in that everybody
What
thinks.
percentage of debt to your total operating budget were you working with?
It was originally underneath my predecessor, 18%. Exactly. So once I started writing the policies and procedures and finding the industry standards through the Government Finance Officers Association, the GFOA, which I still belong to, the average across the entire nation is 10%, and even that is considered high for a municipality, whether it be state, local, federal. Anything above 10% is astronomical.
So you'll be
So it
happy
was-
to know, with our budget, we've just instituted a new policy in order to fund the school to increase the debt percentage, debt schedule at about 3.5%.
That would be a big change. I had
I
a
didn't mean to interrupt you, but
No, that's
I wanted to
fine.
take the time
That's
to
fine.
brag.
I'm
Somebody did-
smiling already. No, it was actually something trying to have people understand that that was too much debt on a community, and therefore you're not able to offer some services that they're looking for because you're heavy in debt. The way the schedules were set up is Nantucket was going to be down to 6% by 2016 if they didn't move forward with some of the bigger projects they were looking to do in the next 2 years. So that was questionable if they were going to come up with another $31 million worth of construction to add on top of the existing debt structure. Prior to that time, the public wasn't aware. Unless they actually sat down and got their pencils and papers out or did it on their own, they weren't aware how much debt and what the standard was for governments. They're at town meeting, they're voting because they believe it's something that's needed, but they don't realize the impact either on their tax bill or on the long-term strength of the town. So I think that's the other aspect that was brought forward. And then one of the largest accomplishments was regaining credibility with the Department of Revenue, with the state of Massachusetts, with Gerald Perry. He actually visited the island over the summer to congratulate
You
everybody
wouldn't
on
go
their
there in
hard
the
work.
winter, but go ahead.
We typically don't ever want to see Jerry Perry at our location. We love him, but we don't want to see him. We like to talk to him on the phone once in a big while to say hi, but that's about it. So him coming to the island and actually bringing all the different members together and congratulating them for all their hard work and striving to regain the state's confidence, that was a huge boost to everybody that worked very hard there.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Brian?
Thank you. How exactly do you view the role of treasurer in the town of Milford?
The role of treasurer, as far as I see it, when it was something that I oversaw in what I refer to as my prior life in Nantucket, it was somebody that was looking at cash flow and projecting cash flow and forecasting cash flow to make sure you can meet paying your bills. That was because the timing that we had for semi-annual billing, that was questionable at some times, where that should never be in question. At any point in time, the town administrator should know exactly from the treasurer where your cash position is at. Making sure that all the cash is reconciled, making sure your trusts are invested and the investments are healthy. If the investments are starting to downturn, you need to be able to be aware to look at that and not necessarily just rely on your advisor that you have available. Many treasurers do have an advisor. I'm not sure if Milford does. But it's something working with your advisor, because your advisor could be working with another client on something else. You need to be able to look at it and also inform your town administrator. That's what I'm used to. So I would say your town administrator that there's a problem with what we're seeing in the trends as far as these investments. Let's move forward with the advisor and see if there's something else that we can get a healthier return without high risk, because that's the other aspect where some governments have gone wrong. They've gone high risk and unfortunately have lost out. Mostly, I think it's keeping on top of that, as well as an area that we didn't focus heavily on that we should have, was tax title, making sure that those taxes that needed to be collected were collected. The treasurer does need to work closely with the tax collector as well as the assessor as far as when do the timing of the bills go out. Are they quarterly? Are they semi-annually? Does it work? Is it something that should change? So the treasurer also needs to work very closely with the town accountant to make sure that the financial statements in the books of the town match exactly what the treasurer has as far as for payroll warrants, accounts payable warrants. Is there any changes? Is there voids? Voids were a big issue in Nantucket, as far as 3 or 4 voids would throw off the entire cash reconciliation process for 90 days. It shouldn't have occurred. Communication between the two groups just needed to be had, and that would have been corrected. So I think it's, as far as the treasurer, it's an integral part of the entire finance department team. It doesn't just operate alone. It needs to operate with its peer group.
And how comfortable would you be working with other department heads, both within town hall and also with the school department? And I'm thinking in terms of some of the more mundane tasks that the treasurer's office does, i.e. get the paychecks out.
Definitely. I think it's strong communication and the ability to go out and see how others operate on a daily basis is key. It's very difficult to just, and it's not something I would anticipate would be the position to sit in an office and try to have everybody else do something for you without understanding what they're doing and how what your request is doing to them on a daily basis. So I think that is key. Is one of the things that I had in Nantucket was a monthly meeting established with each of those cabinet members to make sure that if there was issues, such as just a daily deposit, if there was an issue that was continuous, don't let it fester. Take care of it as soon as possible. And the reason why it was once a month was to make sure it fit in with the person's schedule as well as your own schedule. Just to stay on top of things, to make sure issues didn't creep up and that disconnect would occur. In some cases, the disconnect was there. It was past practice, and you basically just go in each month and then try your best to get the communication to continue and move forward.
And how do you view the role of the treasurer in terms of dealing with the general public as well as town employees, town retirees, that type of thing?
The treasurer.
How would your office operate?
I've always operated, whether it be in municipality or in private sector, with an open door policy. As far as I see, the taxpayers pay your bill. They pay for you to be there, as well as the employees. When they need answers to certain things, there's a reason. Retirees is usually because it's something wrong with their pensions or their health insurance, and there's a concern. So I think that comes with the job, is you need to be able to have your door open and able to reschedule what you anticipated doing that day to make sure that you're supporting the people that you're paid to be there to support. It's not something where you close your door and say, speak to this person here to the left, I don't have time for you. I don't believe in that at all.
One of the aspects that is prevalent in the treasurer's office is handling the health insurance for the employees and also the retirees. How comfortable would you be with that aspect of the job?
Very. It's something that I negotiated each year. We were self-insured through Blue Cross Blue Shield, and I was part of the negotiation team on the plans. What made sense, what didn't make sense, not only to our active base, but our retiree base. It's something I'm very comfortable with.
Now, you talked about working on the budget in Nantucket, and I guess I'm trying to get a sense as to how you communicate in terms of projecting revenues first. When you did that, was that to the full levy limit?
It was to the full levy limit
Okay.
each year. That was our
Was there
projection.
ever excess levy limit
Yes.
in your budget cycles?
Yes. In the
Okay,
prior
and-
2 years, there was excess levy limit.
Oh, in the prior 2 years?
Mhm.
Okay, so for the years that you were the finance director or director of municipal finance, did those budgets go to the full levy limit every year?
Each year except for one had an excess levy limit of $1 million.
Okay, was that planned or unplanned?
It
or-
was unplanned.
Okay,
The plus is it fell to free cash, and it was allocated within the following year. And then you can actually take to the full levy limit in the following year. You didn't lose it per se. You just lost it for the 1 year.
okay,
A decision was made when doing the tax recap. We brought it forward to the Board of Selectmen to see if they would like to do a special town meeting to allocate that $1 million before letting it just fall to the bottom line without allocating it. The decision that was made was not to have a special town meeting because we could recoup it the following year.
so was it ever considered as part of those budgetary processes in the year that, in the years that you were involved, to not raise to the levy limit?
It was something that we were discussing recently, but it wasn't something, it was typically the practice was to take it all the way to the limit.
Okay.
Is that because of the 18% debt, or what was driving?
Pretty much debt as well as salaries and health insurance. It was personnel costs that were driving it.
Yeah, so when you take that kind of an approach and you look to grab all of the revenue that's there, then I don't know that you necessarily get a chance to pare back and be maybe a little bit more conservative with the expenses.
Mhm.
I understand that. You talked about the difference in the debt,
Yes.
or I should say the size of the debt, and I was trying to get an understanding as to what your role was. That was it making it clearer and more apparent to the residents and the taxpayers, and how that interacted into the regular operating budget?
Correct. It was
Okay.
basically making sure that the treasurer at the time was developing a debt schedule. It wasn't paper-based in a book, that it was something that you could look as a Board of Selectmen, Finance Committee, Capital Program Committee, as well as your citizens can look at the schedule and know exactly what your debt structure is for exactly what project, all the way out.
Okay,
And
so-
it's something that is available online on the town's website, unless they've taken it down.
Okay, so I understand that aspect of it. Were there any positive steps that you took or you recommended to try to reduce that debt, maybe through a short-term borrowing, a refinance, that kind of thing?
Yes, it's something that we worked with our financial advisors to do advanced refundings on some of the larger projects that we had out back in 2006.
Okay.
Where we were at a 4% interest rate, we were able to get it down to a 1.45% interest rate.
Okay,
There was items like that that we looked at the schedule constantly. It was also something that was instrumental to the Capital Program Committee, so that they could understand what debt the town already had, and not only just say, yes, we're going to approve this, for lack of a better term. We had a school item that was needed, that was to the tune of $32 million that was coming up. So it was helping the program, Capital Program Committee look at, when is our debt retiring? What approaches should we take? Should we put it in our operating budget? Should we go for a debt exclusion? So it actually created more conversation around, number one, when should we do this project? When does it make sense? How do we actually plan for debt? As strange as that sounds, but also make sure it's stable in your budget, that it isn't 3 million one year, 9 the next, back down to 8 the next, but actually start to plan your debt and your out years and when you're going to do slotted projects, as well as looking at your infrastructure and making sure from a capital program improvement perspective, if you're doing a roof this year and you know it's going to last 20 years, making sure it's in the capital improvement plan going out 20 years, and then making notations in your debt schedule that weren't necessarily published, that these projects will be coming up around that time. So you're not overloading your debt knowing you have some astronomical costs coming up in the future.
Yeah, no, I understand that, and to be honest with you, that's pretty much the level of analysis that's been done in this town
Perfect.
for quite some time. And that's how the debt has gotten managed. What I was trying to drive at was if you inherited, was it 16 or $18 million?
16% of the operating budget.
16% of your operating budget was debt service.
Correct.
What were you able to reduce that to at the end of your tenure?
It was down to 10% at the end of 2013.
Okay, so in a span of, and what time frame is that? Would that be from
was-
07 to 13?
Correct.
Okay, and so from the 16% to the 10%, right?
Correct.
What portion of that was actual retired debt, and what portion of that was refinanced debt that you discovered?
It was probably about 40% refinanced
Okay,
and 60% retirement.
okay.
Let me just jump in
Yep.
so that we can be fair to everyone. Dean, any questions you want to follow up on or anything?
Just a couple of questions more. Irene, you worked in the private sector you had, it looks like 2 or 3 positions here. What can you take, what are the most important parts that you were able to take from your experience in the private sector and then bringing it over to the public sector?
I think as far as explaining items from a government perspective and a private sector perspective, it's helped, and as far as my experience in government, it's helped within the Board of Selectmen, the Finance Committee, Capital Program Committee, as well as the citizens, is explaining the differences, knowing how to explain the differences between government and private sector accounting and why things are different.
Okay. We have, a very dedicated state representative who works very hard for us and state senator. And local aid has been like level, but this year, I think the local aid is gonna be increased and all that. So, we're also very conservative as a board, even before 2.5, Milford was always conservative. It's always important to watch the expenses, but also look at the revenue and try to increase revenue whenever possible.
Mhm.
Now, in your resume, it says increasing revenue. Can you maybe talk about that?
One of the things that we were looking at is each month I would receive the Government Finance Officers Association newsletters, and I still do via email, as well as making sure that I was reading the Beacon and what opportunities were available there on a monthly basis. If there was a new tax being discussed, if there was a fee structure where it's costing us more to provide that service now, and the intent of that service was to be self-supporting, how much could we raise that to? So looking through the legislation and working with town council on that as well. Making sure we weren't necessarily gouging the market, but making sure that we were supporting what was needed for that service, not necessarily in it to make a profit. Government's not supposed to make a profit. So if there's an area that was making a profit, that also gained my attention to make sure that there was fees reduced.
Okay. And just lastly, let's say you were fortunate to obtain this position. Everyone needs a learning curve, but in your particular case, your first day, what could you give us, your first day on the job, and And after that, I mean, what type of, your assets, your skill level, your experience, what could you give us as soon as you started on the job?
I think as soon as I start, if I'm able to obtain the position, which hopefully I am, typically what I do is I stand back and actually learn what processes are currently in place to see what's working and what may need to be improved. And then from there, I would start make recommendations. Typically in each position that I've been with in the town of Nantucket, as well as in my prior employers, it's taken anywhere from 2 weeks to a month, depending on how quickly I was able to ramp up with the existing support structure that was there. I'd make recommendations if there weren't necessarily policies and procedures in place about our borrowing, our risk, et cetera. I'd be looking to see that those were implemented in a short period of time to make sure there were guidelines established. And then one of the things that was most effective in the town of Nantucket that was introduced was timelines, just making sure that everybody understood within that role, here's things that are needed by the state, here's things that are needed locally, here's things that we need just within the treasurer's office or the assessor's office or the tax collector's office. Here's how we all work together and why somebody needs that. So that's something, I hope I answered your question. It would all depend on the structure that's already in place, what items are already in place, but mostly it's just analyzing that first and then move forward from there.
And you realize it's the way our government is set up, some areas are like some departments, like assessors, tax collector are elected, and then town administrator, of course, is appointed, town accountant is appointed, and the opposition is now appointed. So you have to work with people who are appointed as well as
Yes.
people who are elected.
Yes, and I have in the past. We had that structure in Nantucket as well, not necessarily within the finance department, but our town clerk was still an elected official, as well as our registry of deeds through the county, because we had the town and the county.
Okay, thank you.
You've talked to us a great deal about some of the key positions and some of the roles and responsibilities, debt schedule, certainly, forecasting capital needs, forecasting revenues. So that's been helpful. You've talked about restructuring some of the debt and going out looking for preferential or changes to your debt where it was advantageous to the community. One of the things that's required, obviously, is a good understanding of not just the books as you see them, right, but also Department of Revenue guidelines. And so there's a fair amount of state and federal regulations that apply to the role. Can you talk to us a little bit about your experience at that level?
Sure.
Some of it's hard-fought and scars from learning those regulations, but nonetheless, they're experiences and they add to our skill set. So maybe you could help me understand some of your experience there.
Sure. As far as with Mass General Law, it was something that I made sure each year, as anything new is coming out by the Department of Revenue, I would attend that course. There you get the opportunity to also discuss some of the challenges with other treasurer collectors, accountants. It's a forum that is half planning and half finance, pretty much, that attend those. When there's a question, if the Department of Revenue legal services are free to communities, so you don't have to pay your town council per se, if you had a question. So that was an avenue that I would use if there was a question pertaining to law that was unclear. Rather than spend the money on town council, we're spending over $600,000 a year with town council, when you can call free
How
to the
much?
state, $600,000, and got it down to 313. But if you,
We pay our guy about 900,000, so.
I'd say, that check needs to be looked into. But you had that avenue. I also made sure that I had a good working relationship with our representative. If there was a question, my representative there was Jared Curtis. I would give him a call to say, this item just seems unclear. What exactly are you looking for?
I guess the question I had was more, are there aspects of the state or federal regulations that you've had a particular need to delve into deeper, that you've either become an acquired expert, if you will, or you've developed a certain expertise in terms of the regulations, state guidelines, and DOR
It pretty much depends on what area. There are certain laws that, as far as our enterprise funds, because that was our most challenging, I could almost recite Chapter 44, 53F and a half to you,
All right.
if you like me to, or an E and a half,
No,
so.
that's okay, but,
But those were the items that, as far as the laws, as far as with debt, very specific laws on those.
okay.
Always had my Blue Book reference there, as well as searched online for any questions regarding the regulations. And if it's something that needed clarification, I would reach out to the DOR legal if
Okay.
need be. As far as the forms, doing the forms with the state, reporting on a quarterly basis, that was something that I actually filled in for the treasurer, because I did the check and balance between the treasurer and the town accountant, as well as the treasurer and the tax collector and the assessor, before any of that reporting was done at the state or federal level. So I completed all those reports on a quarterly and an annual basis. As far as federal grants and federal grant reporting, that was something that also went through my office. Any contracts relating to state procurement, we didn't necessarily have federal procurement, but state procurement, local procurement, any of those contracts also went through my office. Not as a chief procurement officer, but from a funding aspect, as well as when bills were paid, making sure that they were in compliance with 30B.
Okay. As I said at the beginning of this process, I was going to give you the opportunity, if we didn't delve into something, if you wanted to talk about it in your closing, or if there was anything else that maybe might not be in the resume or is emphasized heavily that you'd like to emphasize, feel free to now. We'll give you an opportunity to close before we wind down the interview.
Okay, I appreciate that. As you may see throughout my resume, throughout my career, I always approach everything. I've been referred to quite candidly as an analyst. I always look at things and how they are, and do they need to be changed? It's not necessarily changed just for change's sake, but does it make it better? I absolutely love working for municipalities and for the government, because now I can see the value add, giving back to the people. It's truly something that you're working for the people and trying to give the best product per se or service that's out there. I think I'd be an asset to Milford, and I hope you choose me.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great to meet you.
Thank you.
You too. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
It's our pleasure. Issues. Come on.
That's yours.
Okay.
Yeah. I
Okay.
got this one here.
We'll take a break now. We'll go into recess for about. All right. As a continuation of our meeting, we'll come back from recess, and we're now going on with the third and final candidate brought forward by the committee recommending, and this is Neil Vadia. And just as a matter of process, I'll go through it with you. Sure. Each of the members are going to ask a question. We'll rotate through that process. Before we begin that, we're going to give you an opportunity to open up and have some opening comments. At the end of that process, if there's something that, maybe we've missed in our questions or you haven't had the opportunity to highlight and you'd like to, we'll give you the opportunity to also close. I'm just going to refresh for everybody what we have in front of us. We obviously have a copy of your resume and your letter of interest. You are currently a town accountant for the town of Northbridge. I see as part of your educational certificates, you have Bachelor of Science in Business Administration, Accounting Concentration, and a Bachelor of Science in Geography. You also have Municipal Auditor and Accounting MMA certification for governmental accounting.
Correct.
You've been with the town of Northbridge since 2006 as their accountant, having worked through from assistant town accountant and also having held the position of junior town accountant for Worcester and other private sector experience that I'll let you delve into in a moment. In addition to that, you provided us your transcripts from Worcester State, where you received your bachelor's. Members have that. You can look at it at their leisure. You also have a certificate that you've been provided from the University of Amherst. And in addition to that, you have references from the former police chief, town in Northbridge, who's currently retired. former chairman of the Board of Selectmen for the town of Northbridge, Mr. Todd Hassett, financial advisory associate, and Deborah Christoph, treasurer collector, as well as, I'm going to ask you to pronounce it, friend and personal reference, Brian
Givner.
Givner, thank you. Hopefully I've covered everything that we should have in front of us.
Yeah.
Is there anything that I've missed?
Just the only one, it's actually Tom Melia. Tom Melia is the Board of Selectmen.
Former chief, now.
Former chief.
on the
Now,
board.
Oh, okay.
current board, yes.
All right.
You mentioned Todd Hassett, but.
Got it.
I submitted a list of references, but the three that gave the personal references was Tom Melia.
All right.
How's Tom doing?
He's doing good.
Doing okay?
He's
Okay.
doing all right for himself.
All right, well, tell him I said-
Post-retirement.
Tell him I said hello.
I will.
Had a few cases with him.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to start, and we're going to start by going back to Brian. Brian, we'll let you begin
Oh,
the
I'm first,
questions
okay.
that you have. Try to change it up, keep everybody on their toes.
Okay.
Please, go
Oh,
ahead.
well, you wanted to.
I'm sorry, your opening statement.
I thought he was gonna-
Thank
It's
you.
okay.
You can talk for me.
Sure. As the chairman stated, my name's Neil Vadia. I'm currently the town accountant for the town of Northbridge. I've been there just over a decade. My anniversary actually just went by in February, this past month. I've been doing it for 10 years. I got hired in 2004 as the assistant town accountant. And I was in that position for about a year and a half. My predecessor did not get reappointed, and the town manager at the time gave me the opportunity to step in, and he gave me that. So I was interim for just about a year, probably not even a year, about 10 months, and then he promoted me to town accountant, I believe, in August of 2006. Prior to that, I had I graduated from Worcester State. I worked in private sector companies for a little bit, doing bank statements, account reconciliations. The first company I worked at was Technically Corporation, which doesn't really exist anymore, but they were a staffing company. And then shortly, I think after that, I got laid off, and then I worked for a company in Boston, and then for a CPA firm in Worcester, to my current job. I also am a call firefighter for the town of Uxbridge, and I've been doing that for 20 years. So I'm well-versed in municipal governance. It seems like I've been doing it all my life, but that's pretty much about it in a nutshell. I live in Uxbridge. I've lived there since 1980. I don't ever see myself leaving Uxbridge. And I'm there with my wife and 2 children.
Okay, thank you. All right, now we'll go to Brian.
Thank you. Well, I guess the most obvious question is, why town treasurer, and what, experience, exposure have you had to the duties of the treasurer position?
Sure. The opportunity is good. It's good right now. It's close to home. That was the number one interest for me, at least. The job's still close to home, where my family's young, so that interests me, the most, because it's a good fit. Milford's a good town. It's a busy town. They have great industry, and things are moving in the right direction. And I think it's the right time for me at this point. As far as you said, exposure. I mean, I work quite closely with the treasurer collector now. We prepared the DE1 together. We do the statement of indebtedness. Obviously, she and I have to reconcile on a monthly, basis anyway. So, I have a lot of exposure to the treasurer's office. In Northbridge, we don't have as robust a staff, probably as Milford. Milford being a bigger town, the budgets are about just about half in size. I think you're about twice as big. And so we have to do a lot more with a lot less individuals. Not that saying Milford doesn't, but our staff, when we've had people go, we haven't typically replaced them, and that's really been since 2006, 2007. I know technically in my office, it was a 2.5 person office, 2 full-time and a part-time person. When my predecessor left, we never replaced it. So, when staff leaves, unless there's only 2 in the office, we typically don't replace them. So, I have a lot of interaction with the treasurer collector's office, so I'm pretty well aware of the inner workings of the office. And, I think for me personally, it's just time for a positive change, and this came up, and it's not that I don't enjoy doing what I do now as being the town accountant, but this would be another
something else for me to learn and pick up and do.
So what, for example, would your experience be in analyzing, categorizing, and maybe projecting long-term debt and how that impacts the community?
If I can answer, I think, can you just repeat the question one more time? I'm sorry.
Well, I'm just trying to get a sense as to, the experience you have with long-term debt that
Sure.
that a
Okay.
community brings on.
Yep.
And of course, it needs to be reviewed so that we
Yep.
can get an understanding as to what our debt payments are gonna be and what's going out in the future.
Sure.
So I'm just trying to get a sense as to the experience and the exposure that you've had to long-term debt issues.
Sure. We obviously do a lot of borrowing. We haven't done as many borrowings probably as Milford, but we've done enough. And I've had a lot of exposure. I've got to sit in on the process, especially when we had gone for our last bonding. We had done, I think it was 3.4 million. It was between a water, a sewer, and some roof projects. So I've got to sit in from the ground and kind of see how that process develops. And as far as doing the schedules, it's a pretty simple thing once you get it going, but projecting the debt's quite easy. You have your debt schedules, it's in front of you. And when we project it for Northbridge going forward, we always put it on a master sheet and go out. We try to go out 5 years. That's our most recent one. And then every year we just kind of update it going forward so people can see the debt as it moves. In Northbridge, I guess the good thing is we don't really have that much debt. Our last big debt issuance was our senior high school, and we refinanced that in 2011, which pretty much took it off the books. So, we get I get the exposure, certainly.
When was the senior high school brought on?
2001.
2001,
Yep,
okay,
and
that was before your time?
Well, it was before my
Okay,
time, and then
okay.
we had the audit done in 2007. They did the final closeout audit, which was
Yeah.
interesting. That was a unique
Yeah.
thing because I had never done that. And then I believe it was 2011, they kind of approached us and said, you want to refinance, which was great. We had the good opportunity, which took the debt off. However, we got proceeds from it of 1.3 million, which we had to reserve and lower the tax rate for fiscal 12, which was unique. The residents liked it. It was a lot different, but then in this year, people got a glimpse of a spike, and
That's
so
when
no one was very happy about
That's when
that.
it comes back to bite you.
That's when it
you
comes
know.
back to bite you.
Once you go down that road of excess levy,
That's right.
there's no looking back.
Looking back.
Yeah.
We had done enough to try to put some extra projects in. So I don't want to say we were playing with house money, but we were. And we did a few projects, a roads project, and what was the other project we had done? The roads and then the town hall. So that combined helped alleviate or take up some of that extra debt that was kind of floating for free, even though it wasn't free. But then we still saw quite the increase in fiscal 14. So it was a unique experience. So things that don't happen every day. We don't refinance every day, and we certainly don't get a windfall like that every day. So that was unique.
Yeah. What has been your level of experience and exposure with tax title and foreclosure issues?
Sure. Actually, just recently we did it. We had a sale just this past Friday. One of the things in Northridge that we've tried to do is try to go after the tax title. We have a tax title attorney. She works closely with obviously the treasurer collector. Keeps me apprised of it as the accountant. And like I said, most recently this past Friday, we had gone out and sold 3 properties that have been kind of sitting around stagnant. One was a property from a fire, and the other 2 were kind of abandoned. I think going forward, it's going to be a positive thing for the town. Something that we're looking to do more of. But yeah, that was the most recent experience or exposure I've had to it.
And one of the major functions of this office in Milford is to oversee and administer the healthcare benefits to employees and retirees. How comfortable would you be in that role?
Actually, very comfortable. I'm a very personal guy, and I enjoy doing this stuff. And as far as the benefits, like I said, the treasurer and I work closely. And so I have exposure from two ends because I also sit on the retirement board. So I have a lot of interaction with some of the retirees, especially when the administrator's out. So I have to fill in some of the gaps sometimes for the individuals, especially when the administrator's out. So I see the retiree side, but I also see because I'm an active employee. So, I see the personal side too. And so administering the benefits is kind of a huge thing. I personally, our office pays the bill. So for me, one of the big things is making sure I always reconciles and checking it and making sure it balances with what the treasurer is saying to be paid. And quite frankly, it wouldn't be that much of a change. I said for what I do now, except I don't have the interaction, I guess, on a day-to-day. The manager pretty much handles the responsibilities of the insurances. He meets with the IAC, and I think they all sit down, and then we have a third party that helps us out, EBS Foreign, with our health insurance, Catholic plans, and gets it all together. Northbridge offers 2 plans. I think in Milford there's only 1, I believe. So we offer 2 plans plus the senior plans.
Let me just jump in. Are you complete in your answer? Because I just want to make sure we get a chance to go through the board a couple of times. And
Oh, yeah.
did you get the answer you?
Yeah, okay, yeah, yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Okay, well,
Dean?
Neil, thank you for applying, nice meeting you.
Thank you.
Can, I asked this to one of the other people, candidates also. What do you know about Milford's finances? I know you touched briefly, but
Sure.
can you try to, whatever you can tell us about
Sure.
Milford's finances?
From what I've seen, Milford seems like it's a town in very good shape. They have a good balance sheet. They have a strong rating from the credit agencies. I mean, your free cash is in pretty good shape. I mean, I compared it to ours, and it's a much different scenario. It seems like, your revenues are trending in the right direction. It's hard for me to say you have a lot of debt, but that was the only piece, I guess, was hard to gauge. It seemed a lot to me. But I think that's going in the right direction too, because a lot of it's in the process, some of it's in the process of being paid off, I noticed. So, I think Milford's a strong, I look at Milford as a strong community, that's going in the right direction, and they've weathered the storm, the financial storm.
Okay. What would be your main assets to the town of Milford?
Sure. I think my main assets, the fact that I've had 10 years of municipal experience, working from a small town, we get a lot of interaction with all the departments. The residents are very interactive in Northbridge. They pretty much check on different things all the time. I mentioned I'm a personable person. I've worked on the fire department for 20 years. You have to kind of learn to get along with a lot of different people, in a lot of different situations, and I think that's the one benefit to being a fireman. You kind of see some people in the most desperate times when you don't want to see them, and fortunately, you kind of have to have a lot of compassion, and I kind of carry that over to this job. I mean, there's no difference. Some days you get a taxpayer who comes in, and they may not be having the best day, and the best thing to do is just kind of sit them down and talk to them, and usually that resolves 80% of the problems and the anxiety that they're feeling. And I think that's the best asset that you can bring forward, because once you get past that barrier, everyone just wants to get listened or be listened to. And once we can reach a common ground, I think, that's when we can move the things forward to get the problem resolved.
And the main roles of a treasurer would be what, as far as?
Well, I think the biggest piece, obviously, the reconciliation, obviously the bank statements, the cash accounts, making sure the money's deposited in the right fashion, making sure the benefits are administrated properly, and that includes, also the payroll, because I know Milford has in-house payroll, speaking with the town administrator. So, those are probably the most important functions. I think somewhere in all that, payroll's probably the most important first, because everyone wants to get paid and they want to be paid on time. So, and then after that, it's just, I think, the reconciliation, and then obviously the cash investing. The management of the debt is an important thing too, but, you have a lot of help, because the treasurers typically have a bank liaison that helps them with a lot of that information too. So, I think the strongest points are obviously the cash reconciliation and the administration of benefits.
Okay, if I could just go back to debt schedule again. we have a very strong financial team. Financial team is yourself, town accountant, fiscal analyst, financial analyst, FinCom chairman, the members, the administrator. They meet on a monthly basis, as needed, quarterly basis, provide strong recommendations. What could you bring to that financial team as far as, recommendations, advice, financial advice?
Sure.
Help, like, for example, we're involved with a school project, and of course, the treasurer was really involved with the determining what we could afford.
Sure.
What the numbers are and all that. So you could talk a little bit about that process, please?
Sure. I had mentioned earlier that we had been involved in the MSBA and then the refinance, but right a couple of years before that, I was involved with the final closeout of the project costs. And so I think what I could bring to the table is the expertise of it. I've kind of gone through some of that already. Just the refinancing structure piece of it, but also the fact that we've had to go through an MSBA project ourselves in the sense of closing it out and making sure everything's reconciled, because there are all different forms and schedules that you have to reconcile to at the end of during the audit, so that basically all the taxpayer dollars are spent in the right direction. Back then when we had done it, there was 78% reimbursement. And so one of the things, obviously, that the audit had fleshed out were some of the project costs that weren't necessarily entitled to that reimbursement. And so I think I could bring something like that to the table, at least, through the financial team, saying, hey, this is what we can expect, this is what we can expect moving forward, and these are probably the things that we may see, especially on this project, especially going out and borrowing. But now the rate has changed, there's funding up front that avoids the town upfronting most of the cost. And so, again, that would be another piece of it that I could bring to him.
Okay. Well, thank you so much.
Sure.
That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Dean. Good to meet you, Neil.
Thank you, you too.
I guess some of the things I wanted to go through, we've talked a little bit about the treasurer's position. We've talked about debt, bonds, we've talked about tax title, and we've talked about reconciliation of accounts. Just off the top of your head, do you know what what your town's, Northbridge's current debt, long-term debt is? What percentage of function of the budget?
I believe it's about 7%.
Okay. So, we've talked a little bit about the state of Milford's finances. So we've not gone through any debt exclusions or tax overrides. We typically are under tax levy by approximately $1 million, sometimes more, sometimes $2 million. Some of that money has been returned to the taxpayer as a benefit. Our debt's currently 3.5%. That's a current level. So that's why I just wanted to make sure you understood when you talked about our debt being high. It's actually less than Northbridge.
Right.
It may be a big number because it's bigger than Northbridge,
bigger
but
than
it's
Northbridge.
less in
Right.
terms of a percentage
I
of
gotcha.
of the budget. I just wanted to make sure that that you got that and
Sure.
other folks understood it. So, everybody's looking to do things faster, better, smarter, more productive. Is there a portion or a piece of your career as town accountant, at least, where you've implemented something in terms of large-scale project, medium-scale project, where it was designed exclusively to provide same level of service, better level of service, improved service, but maybe at reduced cost or just general improvement? Maybe you could talk about that if you've experienced that.
I'd say, Mr. Chairman, I think the one that we're probably working on right now is we're consolidating our payroll. One of the things that we had done when we lost one of the positions in the treasurer's office is we decided that probably in the best interest of the town and moving forward and to kind of to benefit the employees that we'd go out and outsource the payroll. Being there 10 years and loving the benefit of in-house payroll, I was kind of resistant to it, but when we got down to it and we looked at the facts of what was involved and in processing the payroll, their office had gone obviously from 4 to 3, and so one of the things we had talked about exclusively was what are the benefits, of going out-house versus staying in-house. And one of the biggest things we saw was just the fact of how the payroll law has changed and the administration of the benefits. So obviously, the biggest thing that we had done and collectively was we went out and did the RFP for a payroll provider service that ultimately will eventually save the town money because we're not paying the benefit of a person and another salary. And not to mention, it's going to allow the employees to access their payroll pretty much 24/7 online anytime they want. Coupled with this, we're going to be, the reporting of W-2s, that'll also be available to them. And so realistically, moving forward, it'll save a lot of time in the treasurer's office from having to basically take the time if someone loses a W-2 or is looking for their payroll information, the employee will be able to access it.
What was the net savings?
I think in the first year it's about $35,000, and then when you factor in benefits, there'll be a savings about that each year. The first year there wasn't as much of a savings, but every year after that there'll be big savings because there was some implementation costs that we had to undertake with that, obviously, and the one-time conversion fee. But then I think after that it's about between $32,000 and $35,000.
Did you reallocate any personnel, or were there any
We
staff
haven't
reductions?
reallocated personnel yet. We talked. We were gonna. We're still in the talking of hiring a part-time person, so which would again save us having to hire a full-time person. This person would strictly probably work on the payroll because there's still clerical stuff that needs to be done with it, but it would free up the other person who's been strictly doing the payroll and have her free up to do other things. So that's where we see the benefit because she's been with the town a lot longer. We could shift the responsibility to a new part-time person to oversee the clerical stuff, and then we'd free up the other person to do other stuff.
When you hired that other person, will you still realize
Yeah,
$35,000?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
Okay. Is there anything else that you can think of that in terms of productivity improvement, process changes, maybe sometimes as a function of audit results or management letters that you were part of overseeing?
Yeah, I think one of the other things that we had done too was with the school department. We had implemented I'm trying to remember, this is kind of more than my predecessor, but we kind of instituted too when we started the purchase order system between the school and the town, and that kind of streamlined some things, more so on the school department. I kind of came in more on the tail end of that, and that was a recommendation that the auditors had given some years ago. But that had streamlined some of the process too, because now the school was able to oversee their own purchase order system, and the town just approved it.
Okay. Come back to Brian.
I'm all set.
Are you?
I'm all set, Bill.
All right. Given that we're pretty far along, what I wanted to do is also mention to you, or as I mentioned earlier, the opportunity to summarize if there's anything that you don't think we've delved into, if there's anything that you'd like to highlight, or take the opportunity to close.
Sure. Just that, I think that, moving forward, I think I'd be a good candidate for the town of Milford. I'm an excellent, we're a good team player. Everyone works to get the job done. And I think at the end of the day, that's really the primary goal of any function in municipal work. I mean, we want to collaboratively work together to get the problem solved. And I think we've done that a lot in Northbridge over the years. When I started, I know in 2004, and I tout this, there were, I think, about 23 management issues that had come up for various reasons of various things. And, as a collective, as a team, we had solved a lot of those together. And I think that's really the key to getting things done, is people just have to work together. And if, sometimes if egos get pushed aside, we can really get a lot of it done. And, I'm proud of what we've done in Northbridge. Sometimes I just wish there was extra funds to do what we wanted to do to move forward, but that's unfortunately what we can't do that. We can't just, make or print money. If that were the case, it would be much easier. But, I think that's where it lies. I think if we can all work together and just get the job done, and that's really what I'm about. I'm not about taking I'm taking credit or anything. It's just going in. I like to get the job done and go home at the end of the day knowing that we've done a good job and things are looking good.
Okay. Yeah, I appreciate you taking the time out, appreciate your interest in the position
Thank you.
that we've got open, and appreciate you coming in this
All
evening.
right.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Great to
much.
meet
Thank you.
You too.
Thank you, Neil.
Thank you.
Thank you, have a good
Nice
night.
meeting you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Lindsay, next, you be the next candidate.
That pretty much concludes the interviews for the town treasurer's position. I was going to go to the board members to see what their feelings were in terms of response to the position, if anybody's interested in making a motion, but it would be my recommendation that maybe we sit on this. It's not time-sensitive today, and maybe we'd want to consider taking it under advisement for whatever the period of time, week, 2 weeks, whatever it is. But I'll go out to the board members and see what the board members' feelings are. We'll,
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, no, I think, no, we had a good process, you know, 3 individuals. They were also interviewed by town council and our administrator, so I go along your recommendation. I mean, I think I have a good feel of what I would like to do, but I would go along with your recommendation. We do have a meeting next week.
yes, we did. Okay, Brian?
I'm prepared right now to make a motion to appoint Kelly Capisi to the position of treasurer. I don't feel the need to wait on it at all. I don't think it helps us in terms of whether or not either of you want a different candidate. I would imagine that they may have other job opportunities available, and I think the longer you wait, you might lose one of those candidates. But to me, a lot of what was said a couple of meetings ago in terms of the fire department and an individual working their way up the ranks to the top position holds true right here. And I alluded to it during the interviews. I'm very impressed with Kelly's work ethic and how she has taken step-by-step progress through the town treasurer's office and uniquely knows the town of Milford. The other thing I think we need to consider is the effect on these individuals. They've gone forth, they've put in the application, they've gone through the interview, and I think that, they deserve the respect and the courtesy of a timely response.
That's a valid point. Yeah.
So I would make a motion right now to appoint Kelly Capisi to the position of treasurer.
All right, is there a second?
No. Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
since, that's fine. Brian brought up a candidate, and no, fine. She's a, wonderful person, dedicated person, and she has served that office well. When I spoke, when we were having a discussion about whether this position should be appointed or not, my advocacy for the position being appointed was that I would like to try to find the most qualified person, someone who has the education, someone who has the experience, someone who can come in and from one day do the job, all the facets. We've been fortunate to have 2 wonderfully dedicated individuals in this position, and so going forward, that's the type of individual I was looking for. I was very impressed with Irene Larrabee. I think she has a degree. She has been a budget analyst, assistant finance director, deputy of municipal finance. She spoke at length about the contracting, the forecasting, the debt schedule that she's done, the increasing productivity, the financial policies, working as a team to reduce debt, increase productivity, policies, establishing and strengthening the financial structures. I think, I think we've all said it in one way or another in the past. We're very fortunate in Milford that we've been able to do what we have done. I think a lot of it has been our recommendations. Probably most of it has been the working with the financial team, the type of people that we've had on the financial team, the expertise, the knowledge, and then bringing the recommendations forward. I think this person can come in and not miss a beat and continue to do the great work that the other treasurers have done, and working with the town administrator and all the financial department heads in rendering recommendations and sound policies that will make the town of Milford continue to be solvent and physically in good shape. We have to be careful. We can't make mistakes going forward, especially, I think Brian has said in the past, especially with the school project. I mean, everything has to proceed accordingly, and there can't be any real dits in the road, because otherwise everything is thrown off. So we need someone to really watch that, someone who knows how to continue to do debt schedules, monitor it, bring recommendations to us. And, I was, very impressed by the resume. I was very impressed by her presentation and her depth in answering questions, especially in the financial areas and the things that she's been involved with, not just on a superficial level, but really involved. And, she's made the town of Nantucket a better place because of her involvement, because of her recommendations, and because of her work. And I just believe that, she would fit in well, and that, she would continue to, to make this financial team even stronger, maybe even delve into other areas that maybe we haven't delved in it before, with some of her knowledge and experiences. And I feel most comfortable that, this person could do a great job in that office, work very, very closely with all the other professionals that we have in town, with the people in that office, and also with the public, and everything that is involved with the town treasurer's position and functioning. So I would be prepared to, if you would accept it, I would make a motion for Irene Larrabee.
Okay, not hearing a second for Ms. Capisi. Entertain that motion for Irene Larrabee.
Motion, Mr. Chairman.
Is there a second?
No.
Okay. I think for many of the reasons that you stated, Dean, Ms. Larrabee is certainly skilled front to back with many of the aspects of the town treasurer, both bonding, working with Moody's investors, having direct and ongoing experience with reconciliation process. It was my hope that we would be able to hire a local, but I think there is no doubt from at least what I observed that the more experienced and seasoned and capable candidate is the one that's been doing the job and having direct experience with all aspects of the treasurer's role for more years, more time, and also having that education. I would second that motion. So we'll take a vote. All in favor?
Oh, can we have discussion on the motion?
Sure.
Yeah. I can understand what you're talking about in terms of, the Ms. Larrabee, but, there's a couple of points that I would caution you on before you go forward on your vote. And, there's no question she's a very intelligent person. She's very experienced. But, what I drew out of her interview was what I perceive to be a potential conflict of philosophy with how we operate things here in Milford. If you listen to her closely in terms of how she oversaw and managed the budget, it was quite clear that she looks to raise to the levy limit unequivocally in every aspect. That is not what we do in the town of Milford. That's not what the Finance Committee advocates. That's not what the financial team has done. And in fact, if you hear from the Northbridge candidate, who also is a very fine individual, I don't want to take away from any of his qualifications, he gave us a direct experience of what happens to a town when you get weaned off of that excess levy, the taxpayers get hit with a high tax bill. So the worry that I have about Ms. Larrabee is her coming in, having been used to basically full control over all the financial departments, now having to work interactively with a finance committee, with a town account, with other individuals, and a philosophy of going to the full levy limit. I think that's a problem for this community. And reinforcing her philosophy was another answer that I got in response to one of Dino's questions, which I found quite disturbing, where, you know, she looks for whatever taxes or fees the state might approve to be able to assess to the residents. There's a philosophy from her that I find in contradiction with what we do in the town of Milford in terms of trying to grab every dollar that they can. That's not what we've done in the town of Milford. So I would just caution you to think about that concept, because that's the problem I see. You know, Ms. Capici, I think, you know, she's got a degree in the office of the treasurer in the town of Milford. She's earned it over 27 years moving up the ladder. She's put in her time, she's paid her dues, she's done everything that we have professed that we want employees to strive for in the town of Milford. We want to build up their morale by giving them hope that they can improve themselves. And that's what she's done. She knows the philosophy of the financial aspects of the town of Milford. She knows the interactions of the different committees, and that's why I think that she's the best candidate going forward.
Okay. You know, you raise a great point, and I think, you know, in part, I think the raising to the levy capacity is something that I see a lot of communities doing. I'm not sure it was as much a function of the candidate's, Mrs. Larrabee's personal philosophy as much as it was a part of the system that she inherited, including a very significant debt schedule. So I would say I don't want to debate on it. I think what we have is a difference in opinion. I didn't view that as being her philosophy as much as the only avenue out with a community that wasn't, prior to her arrival, budgeting and being as conservative. But I appreciate your comments. I think we are positioned with a motion and a second to continue with the vote. So all those in favor? I also vote in favor. All those opposed? Brian opposed, it's a vote. Next item on the agenda is the town administrator's report. So I guess the next thing we would address with the town administrator is directing the town administrator to contact Mrs. Larrabee and begin contract discussions.
I will do that, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
I have no report today.
Okay, no report. The next item on the agenda is old business. Does anybody have any old business?
None, Mr. Chairman.
All right. I just wanted to signal the board after some thought under old business that as it relates to land trust for the land that we've been discussing putting in a trust, I've been asking particular questions as it relates to some of my reservation about what and how things might be restricted. For example, town water supply, addition of new well fields, maybe expansion of the existing trail. There are a host of things that I might be able to think of now. I just want to signal to the board that I have additional concerns over things that I may not be thinking about when we talk about putting a land trust and paying somebody to manage that land trust for us, who are not from Milford and not from within the town. So I just wanted to signal to the board members, at least let you know that the direction I'm going in terms of my thought process was going towards hoping that this board would place this with the Conservation Commission and have it within the complete control of the town. I know it's a different philosophy and a different process, but I also don't want the depending on how the board feels, I know this takes 2/3 vote at town meeting. I also want to convey that if others are so inclined, that we could give direction to the town planner so that he not spend too much of his energy with a separate land trust, but instead begin to look at the avenue that town council put in front of us with respect to the Conservation Commission. So I just wanted to say that, and if you're not prepared to talk about it, we can bring it up at the next meeting, or if we want to talk about it this evening, we can.
So we need more information, just trying to say we need ascertain additional
No,
information?
I'm going to tell you, I guess where I am is I'm absolutely uncomfortable with putting the largest parcel of land that the town owns into the hands of somebody from out of town to manage and own that land. And frankly, at the end of the day, tell us what we can and cannot do on it. So that's my concern, that's my reservation. After I've given it a great deal of thought, that's my thinking and the direction, or at least my opinion, so.
Well, have you looked at the easement, the conservation easement that we currently have at Walden Woods?
I have.
Because, I mean, that would answer the questions you've raised. That talks
It-
about the restrictions.
It would answer some of them. For example,
I mean,
if-
those are the restrictions.
if there were in a butter, for example, that wanted to do a land swap and needed 3 acres of this parcel to swap the town for 15 acres somewhere else, that may be something that's advantageous. That land would no longer, we couldn't convey land that were under that trust. Or if it were under the town's complete control, we may be able to do that separately.
No, I think, I mean, I
There's
put it
things
on,
like that.
we'll put it on for an agenda item. I don't have
That's
any
fine.
problem talking about, but I would
I just want to
suggest
tell
that
you where I am on it.
Well, I mean, you know, that's fine, and, you know, that could change too, but could not. But, you know, I mean, I think, you know, the fact is, we've got 185 acres at Walden Woods already under that restriction.
I understand.
That's under the jurisdiction of the Conservation Commission. So, you
I'm
know,
not-
some of these questions that you've raised, it's right in the
I'm
document.
not interested in adding 300
So
acres
just-
to it. So just giving you my thoughts and my concerns, and whether you think they're valid or not is
Well, it's
certainly up
200
to you.
acres. It's 200
I'm sorry,
acres.
200 acres.
200 acres.
So adding to that is not something that I'm interested in, but that's my opinion, and we can all have one.
Put it on a future agenda. that's
Okay. Any new business?
all. No,
Extra
Mr.
agenda?
Chairman.
Okay.
Okay.
Any new business?
Nope.
Okay. No items of correspondence, so I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
Move.
I will gladly second that motion.
All right, and I'll also vote in favor. That's unanimous. All right, thank you.